I've spent enough time playing Minecraft to watch the landscape of the game change substantially. Gone are the days of long serial Let's Plays and problematic YouTubers. Okay, maybe that last part hasn't changed so much. Still, the landscape of Minecraft content is less centered on zany personalities and more focused on spectacle. The Mr. Beastification of YouTube, if you will. But I'm getting off topic. YouTube coverage isn't the only way that the Minecraft landscape has changed, and it's not anywhere close to the most important. Dozens and dozens of updates have given rise to a more complex game that is capable of doing more than it ever was before. This predominantly comes in the form of more blocks, mobs, biomes, and items, but it extends further than that too. Minecraft has gotten much more technically complex, allowing for things like data packs and more complicated commands. Hell, I remember a time when there weren't commands in a single-player world. That was a mod you had to install. One of my favorite examples of this shift comes in the form of adventure maps. The idea of using the engine of Minecraft to tell a story or play some other kind of game is a concept that players have been using for years. Of course, in the early days, the standard of quality was far lower. The example I always think about is Kingdom of the Sky from 2011. I remember it feeling very impressive back then, but it doesn't look nearly as good as I remember it. I so badly wish I could play the voiceovers from this map, but they have sadly been privated. While they're not as popular as they once were, adventure maps are still alive and kicking, and there's a lot you can do with them. Gone are the days of communicating rules on signs, asking nicely for the players to follow your rules. Even something like Herobrine's Mansion feels quaint when compared to today's standards. In recent times, the map that's captured my attention is a large survival/adventure map called Drehmal Apotheosis. While I was drawn in by the large, stunning landscape, I stayed because it's so much more deep than that. It's such a rich world that tells a compelling story, and I decided that I wanted to share that story with you all today. Before we dive into my analysis, I feel as though I would be doing you a disservice if I didn't put a spoiler warning here. Spoiler warning isn't the right term, actually. This is my formal plea to get you to play this map for yourself. This map does have a story, and I will be covering a lot of it in my analysis. It will definitely not be covering everything, because the story is constructed in such a way that most of it is left for you to discover at your own pace. I don't intend on combing the entire map for the sake of this video. I would like it to come out in a timely manner for one thing, and I want people to leave this video with a drive to play the map for themselves, even if they watch the video beforehand. I want to leave stuff for people to uncover for themselves, and don't worry, you'll have more than enough stuff to go find after this. I cannot stress to you just how large the scope of this map is. The main map is 12,000 by 12,000, all of it custom terrain. I'm dangerously close to becoming a salesperson, so I'll end this segment by saying that if any of what I've shown you looks cool, I encourage you to check out the map for yourself at drehmal.net. The link will be in the description. We're awoken by something called Avsohm. Trapped in some kind of life pod, we look around to see that while many of the other pods have opened, nobody else seems to be here. And those that are, well, aren't. You know what? Hang on. I've gotten a bit ahead of myself. What is a Drehmal? Obviously it's a Minecraft map, but that's a little bit reductionist to say because while it's true, it's not the whole truth. In essence, it's an open world RPG that uses Minecraft at its framework. It's got custom terrain, towns, cities, mobs, weapons, and some textures. It even has a few mods in order to make some of the mechanics work properly. While it's an open world game, the story is fairly non-linear, and a lot of the information is conveyed through text, occurring in a couple different forms. This means that in order to get the full experience, you're gonna have to read. Well, you would. I'm here, so technically you just have to listen while this plays on your second screen as you're doing something else. That being said, the game encourages you to explore to figure things out. You can get the broad strokes by just doing what the game commands, but if you want to fully understand what's going on in this world, you're going to have to go out of your way a little bit to try and uncover all the lore that this world has to offer. I will try my absolute hardest to cover all the important details. I've played through this a few times, and I generally get what happens and what I need to talk about, but this will by no means be a full recap of everything you can do in this world. There are tons of locations and items that I simply will not encounter in my analysis of this game, and I encourage you to go do it for yourselves. This is where my spoiler warning really takes effect, as from here on out, the entire video will be a recap of the game from start to finish. Where was I? Right, Glass Chamber. The life support system that was responsible for keeping this place alive has seemingly failed, at least for the upper half. That much is immediately clear to me. Because of this failure, the system has decided to release the remaining pods, except once we break out, there's nobody else here. All the other pods have nobody in them, and it doesn't look like anyone else broke their way out. Then again, maybe they managed to get out of this place when it was still working. I get the feeling that I should know this place. I should understand where I am. I can feel the significance to why I'm here, but as I try and focus on it, it's lost on me. The computer, dubbed Avsys, tells us that this facility is running on backup power. I could have told you that. I spot a terminal near the exit of this room, but it lacks sufficient power or data. The system tells me I need to perform a reset in order to re-establish the link with the grid. This little computer seems to be what the system wants me to fix, and sure enough, powering it up establishes the link with the holotext database, allowing us to read whatever this terminal says. Attention, all rank B1 personnel. An energy collapse is imminent. Please enact stasis protocols immediately. This is not a drill. The Everfear is no longer cooperating. I have no idea what the Everfear is, but we must be important to whatever operation was going on here if we warranted having B1 classification. Well, that could mean anything, I suppose, but they were trying very hard to keep us alive. How long were we in stasis for? How bad did things get while we were in there? I spend the next few minutes roaming the upper area, where a tree and a small farm seem to grow in the absence of sunlight. There are a number of basic supplies here for me to scavenge, including some food, thankfully. Another terminal goes over a series of important events in the log of this place. A handful of the pods were evacuated a few years before we were let out, before the other pods flatlined. I wonder if any of them made it out. I wonder if any of them were the dead people I saw lying in the upper pods. For my own sanity, I decide not to investigate which of these things is true, and besides, my attention is being drawn elsewhere on the log. Someone has been here. I don't know how long ago, but it must have been after we were put into stasis. Whatever it was gone within 30 minutes. The terminal does not reflect what or why this thing was here, and that's what I'm afraid of. Breached. That word fills me with dread, and I don't entirely know why. Heading up the ruined stairs, more holotext discusses the failsafes that have been put in place. For what? I don't know. I also don't recognize any of these terms except for stasis, obviously. A journal on a desk gives us a complete list of everyone who is in stasis. This reveals to us that our name is Voski Otis. I'll just get this out of the way right now, that none of these characters will impact our narrative as the player. They will come up from time to time, but as far as who we are as the player, they don't matter at all. We're still functionally a blank slate. The game then teaches us that chiseled bricks indicate something lies behind the wall. This is basically the game's version of yellow paint, but since this is Minecraft and everything is destructible, I guess it makes sense to show us when something is actually worth breaking. I come to a room full of important murals that we're going to talk about in a second, but first, this revelation about the stone bricks has caught my attention. High above the pool of water in the center of this main room sits what appears to be a pipe, and at the center of this pipe is a chiseled stone brick. I have to pillar my way up to it in true Minecraft fashion, but upon breaking it, I am proven correct as water pours from the pipe, giving us a further way up. I exit the pipe to see some kind of surveillance room, but more important than that is what's frozen on the monitor. This has to be the thing that breached the stasis facility, but this doesn't answer why it was here to begin with. If anything, I'm more confused now. Why does it appear to be approaching those of us who were stasised? There's no more information to be gained here, and I'm tired of asking questions I can't get answers to, so I decide to just leave this place and return to the murals. We are immediately greeted with a statue of Drehmal, the Realmbinder and namesake of this world. These murals tell us a condensed version of his history. The primal tree serves as the basis for reality. As the mural puts it, reality forms around the primal tree. This, in turn, gives way to war, where we see the tree amidst a background of bloodshed and possibly fire. It's hard to tell. This threatens to destroy reality as we know it, and the soul of the tree becomes three divine beings, Drehmal, the serpent, and their two humanoid siblings, Malus and Virtuo. The divine serpent is then responsible for reforging the world. This myth makes up the backbone of the setting. I said myth, but to my knowledge, this story is completely and utterly true. This will be more apparent later for a couple reasons, but suffice it to say right now that in true fantasy fashion, the gods are very much real. Heading further up, we come across a hollow door, one that I cannot simply just break. If this door is in place, how did someone breach their way in? I don't know, but I do see that someone has set up a small camp on the other side of the door. Fortunately, while I don't immediately know how to open this door, another of these terminals reveals the way to do so. As a precautionary measure, a fire in the facility will trigger the fire suppression system, part of which includes automatically opening the door in the process. Fortunately, I have a campfire on my person, which I immediately use to commit arson in a sealed bunker. Now that we've managed to exit the stasis facility, all that's left to do is ascend the staircase to figure out where we are, and more importantly, where to go from here. At this point, we're functionally free. There's nothing the game can do from here to force us down a specific path. This game, for better or worse, runs off Minecraft's rules. If you choose to, you can treat this world like a regular Minecraft sandbox. Of course, doing that would undermine the entire point of this video, and consequently the entire point of this game, so I don't exactly intend on doing that. But we currently don't have any specific directions to go. The stasis facility left us with questions, not directions. Exiting the facility, we are immediately struck by the 3 mountain peaks that bear a resemblance to the 3 gods we just learned about. A small signpost building tells us that this path leads to the Primal Caverns. This place is very beautiful to look at, but it does little in the way of solving the mystery. This cavern is the resting place of the Divine Serpent themselves. It's not dead, but after reforming the world, they enter into a deep slumber which they have yet to awaken from. Towards the back, we can find a chest that contains a stack of compasses that all point right here, in case you want to come back. You'll notice very quickly that this game uses compasses a lot to give the player direction when it wants them to go somewhere specific. This is modded Minecraft, but it attempts to downplay this fact wherever possible, instead opting to feel like it functions using Minecraft's standard rules, which, for the most part, it succeeds in. As such, the only real way to have an objective marker is to use a compass. This does lead us into something that's not an issue right now, but will become one increasingly quickly: inventory space. Minecraft's lack of a true inventory update is something of a known issue, but it'll be put on full display here soon. RPGs are all about collecting items, and a lot of them, and this game has to pull double duty because you also need Minecraft items, because you will occasionally be expected to do Minecraft things. This means that your inventory can quickly fill up, and you will likely spend some amount of time sorting your inventory and rationalizing to yourself what you need and what you don't. This is most noticeable in the fact that weapons and armor are unstackable, and as such take up an excessive portion of your inventory. There is a workaround to this issue, but it'll take us a minute before we get to it. For now though, we don't have a lot of stuff to keep track of. This side of the path leads us nowhere, so I guess we'll just start wandering in the other direction instead. The land is ancient. Most of the structures that line our way are crumbling, some of which are only barely recognizable as buildings to begin with. I come across a small fortress on a hill, a church whose only surviving remnant is the tale of war for the primal tree, and a handful of mystery ruins that I don't even know the purpose of. But piercing the landscape, surveilling the capital valley, is a tower that appears to be made by the same people who built the place we woke up in. It bears the same color scheme we saw in the stasis facility. I'm not the first person to stumble across this tower. The ladder leading to the top gives that away. It's unlikely though that someone else would have the ability to use it if they weren't a member of the Empire. I'm jumping a bit ahead here. You don't need to know what those terms mean exactly just yet. We'll get there, I promise. The button atop this tower warps us to somewhere that is even more futuristic than the stasis facility. Except it's dark as shit. Only one room has been illuminated, and I have no idea what this little machine does, but it does seem to know who we are. It recognizes our rank, recognizes our clearance, and decides that we've got a job to do. In order to reset one of the terminals in a place called Av'Sal, we're given a compass to guide us to it and asked to reboot it by hand, since the system can't seem to do it itself. This is the game's primary form of missions. Important objectives are often denoted by asking us to follow a compass. It's probably the least intrusive way to do this within the context of Minecraft. There's no quest markers, no minimap, no nothing. You can mod those things in, but the goal seems to be to create as close to a vanilla experience as possible. I like this as a compromise. This is probably the best way to merge the two halves of the game together. It's a very distinct Minecraft thing to be able to do, but it still conveys the quest information you want it to. This does notably though create an extreme impulse to follow the compass no matter what lies ahead of you. Modern gaming has suffered from this problem for a long time. You give players an object and tell them to follow it, they'll often pick the shortest possible path, even if said path is not the one of least resistance. Things like maps and path markers help to mitigate this issue by making the players less reliant on purely following the quest marker, but Minecraft doesn't have any of the features needed to compensate for this fact, at least not innately. This isn't helped by the fact that the compass doesn't tell you how far you are from the thing, only in which direction. Okay, this is partially a lie, as it does have coordinates attached to it, but I don't want to use the tooltip screen, so it won't be much use to me here on Java Edition. I suppose while we're here, it's worth it to talk about the tower system. If you've ever played a Ubisoft game before, this will all feel incredibly familiar to you. The Terminus serves as a method of fast travel around the map. Given that it's so expansive, this is definitely a welcome addition. I really like that this has a very vanilla feel to it. A lot of modern games allow you to fast travel from any point on the map to anywhere, essentially letting you teleport around. This is very convenient for the player, but not conducive to map exploration. You have to visit each place at least once to unlock a fast travel point, sure, but it still cuts down on the amount of wandering you do, especially if you can just teleport wherever you feel like. Some games try and limit fast travel by having it linked to a specific point on the map. Many CDPR games fall into this category. Both The Witcher 3 and 2077 only let you fast travel from designated points, meaning if you're in the middle of the swamp and you want to fast travel somewhere else, you do have to find the nearest signpost. The towers in this game are analogous to this example. You can only fast travel by accessing one of these towers, and you can only visit the ones you've previously accessed. The thing that makes this a little different is that just visiting the towers isn't enough. You have to use them to put them into the system. This makes each tower a mini puzzle of sorts, in the same vein as Breath of the Wild. But of course, this is Minecraft, and any puzzle can be bypassed by building. So maybe this is more like Tears of the Kingdom. Discovery of these towers will be crucial to completing the story in this world, as we'll come to see, but for now just know that you will be expected to explore above and beyond just the missions you're given. Armed with a compass pointing us somewhere, and not being able to access anything else in this place, the only thing left to do is leave. I could follow this compass right away, but I want to figure out where this road leads me first. That, and I am not equipped to handle, well, anything. I come to a crossroads and encounter names I don't recognize. Av'Sal is obviously where I'm being instructed to go by the compass, but because I have very little in the way of supplies, much less armor, I instead decide to head left to New Drehmal. In my notes for this game, I wrote down that Drehmal is basically Exposition the town. As the first town that we're likely to visit, and with a world full of information you'd have no other way of learning, the game has a lot of ground to cover. What separates this from other games is that all of the lore is entirely optional. Pretty much all of the information in this world is, since it's all conveyed through books and holotext. There's a finite amount of stuff that you're expected to read. I like that this grants you the ability to treat the game however you like. You can get a complete narrative from just doing the bare minimum, but there's so much more to learn here if you have the time or interest in doing so. We obviously do, that's the point of the analysis, so let's see what we can learn in this town. Now seems like a good a time as any to talk about some of the foundational elements of this world. We are Dromari, humanoid creatures with antlers or horns that dominate the continent. That's why all of the villagers you see look the way they do. The character we play is also a Dromari, but I'm just a really funny looking one with a couple of birth defects. We'll encounter many races over the course of the game, modeled after other defined beings, but we'll talk about them as they come up. Perhaps the most important thing we can learn here comes in the form of this book, The Rise of Avsohm. This book chronicles the rise of Drehmal, Prince of the Chosen Kingdoms in the Central Plains. He reluctantly took the throne and began to form the Avsomic Empire, uniting the people in the hopes of preparing themselves for times of conflict between deities. The capital was moved from the original Drehmal to Av'Sal, which now lies in ruin, supposedly housing powerful relics. Given that the compass wants us to reset something that lies within Av'Sal, suffice it to say I believe this book when it says powerful tech lies within that place. We've already seen some of this tech in action. It kept us alive in stasis for who knows how long. I can't help but picture that figure I saw in the stasis facility monitor, and wonder what else might lie at the heart of a broken empire. We can also find a book labeled The Fall of Avsohm. This book tells a condensed story of the Empire's decline following the death of its first emperor. The most substantial detail is that the Empire met its ultimate fate under less than certain circumstances. The book describes this as a mysterious event that resulted in the disappearance of many of the Empire's military and industrial leaders. It seems as though we are not the only ones who were unclear about what happened to Avsohm, which stands to make solving this mystery much, much harder. Elsewhere in the town, we can find a library of books that gives us a wider understanding of the world we found ourselves in. A series of 3 books chronicles the deities that make up the pantheon of this world. We've been introduced to Drehmal, Malus, and Virtuo, but they are only a small portion of the total. I don't want to read all of these documents in their entirety, but let's cover the ones that I find particularly interesting. Virtuo has seemingly vanished from this world. She's likely not dead, but her parish and her are nowhere to be found. She disappeared at the end of the third Avim, which for clarity's sake just means era. Malus is known as the Scourge of the West. He's been raising hell on Drehmal for a long time by the sound of it. This book lists a handful of his accomplishments, including but not limited to the slaughter of Sal'Mevir and the destruction of the South Heartwood. Add these to our list of places to note. Drehmal had a very short period of activity in the second Avim, but was instrumental in shaping the world as it exists now. The next 2 books chronicle the minor and major aspects. Among the more notable major ones are Kaiv, who gifted mortals with the ability to use magic, Dar, considered king of the aspects and is lord of the celestial body they reside on, Lodar. Vaynikla and Voynala are the aspects of life and death, respectively. As far as the minor aspects, there are a substantial amount of them. The ones I want to highlight are Noha, aspect of harvest, and Muz, aspect of beasts. Both are confirmed to be deceased. Mari, aspect of Dremari, helped to create the forms of the Dremari, hence the name. The one that stands out to me the most, though, is probably Teflane, the aspect of fear. Like Noha and Moose, he is believed to be deceased after disappearing. Believed to be. It's weird that this book implies that even the deities don't know where he is, right? Even if he's dead, it's weirder still that they don't know what killed him or where he died. I don't know, I have more pressing issues to deal with than litigate the whereabouts of some maybe dead, maybe living celestial being that I know nothing about. In addition to this information, I've also managed to secure some supplies for my journey to Av'Sal. I don't think the horses will miss these hay bales, not like he was eating them anyways. I also get the chance to dump a bunch of stuff I don't want into an ender chest, which will be present in every town and city we visit. A nice touch. This adventuring merchant dude also sells a couple important things, notably runic vessels, the artist formerly known as Shulkerbox. These are instead purchased mainly with runic catalysts, which you can often find by exploring out-of-the-way areas. With some armor and food, I've decided I'm geared up enough to take on Av'Sal, and so I set off for this place armed with nothing but a compass and the instructions to reset another terminal. What I end up finding is a massive series of ruined homes and miscellaneous buildings, at the center of which sits this giant dome. Even when it's in ruins, there's a strange beauty about this place. I'm fascinated by ruins in general and the history that they represent. While I don't know exactly how long we were in stasis for, the ruins here before us clearly lay out that it's been a long, long time. I'm obviously being guided to the central dome at the heart of the fallen city, but I'd be remiss if I didn't get a look around first. One thing we'll quickly come to realize is that this place is not abandoned. Well, the Dremari who once made up the Empire do not reside here. In that sense, it is vacant. What we learn by exploring is that the Meekmari have taken refuge in the remnants of Av'Sal. The Meekmari are the game's term for the Illagers, and describe a race that is half Maelmari, we'll talk about them later, and half Dremari. They've stationed themselves both at the center of this place and in some of these columns that used to make up a bridge. This makes getting to whatever I'm tasked with resetting a pain in the ass, because I first have to dispatch most of these guys before I can actually look around the place. I find a holotext at the base of this tower, but the computer needs to be reset before I can proceed. After killing the Meekmari inside the dome, I have uninterrupted access to this place. Well, as long as they're dead, time to go through their stuff! Before I do that though, I re-establish the link with Avsis, which should power everything back up. The table holds a large map of Av'Sal, and across from that is a list of things I presume the pair I just killed were working on. The nearby chests house little of interest, with one exception. Near the throne is a chest containing some scales, some iron nuggets, a journal, and an image. Found this old picture in the rubble. Seems to be the only thing left when we arrived. This place has been ransacked by every bandit group since the start of the third Avim. Strange that they left this behind. Or they didn't find it. I can organize an expedition to find this strange door, but who knows where it could be. Maybe some of the other Mi'kma'ri clans have seen or heard of it? Could head to Okiki or Dusps to get some information, as I've heard their libraries are somewhat comprehensive. We have too much on our agenda though. Can't go on a goose chase for some cool looking door. We have our own mysterious door here in Av'Sal to worry about. Accompanying this journal is a photo of a large door, though I cannot see what lies on the other side of it. I've seen so many strange things up to this point, but there's something about this image. A door so large and yet so empty. The journal remarks that it's weird that for as long as this place has been abandoned, as many times as this place has been raided, this photo remains unclaimed. I feel as though it has been waiting for us, though I admit I don't know why I think that. I don't know where this place is, but I feel it calling to me, and screaming at me to stay away. The journal also notes there's another large door here in Av'Sal, and if there's more to be learned here, then I definitely need to find it. Claiming the tower for the terminus gives me a better vantage point to look around, but notably, upon exiting the tower, I spot a big hole in the ground that leads to somewhere I haven't explored. More Mi'kma'ri are camped outside of this door that looks exactly like the one that kept us in the Stasis facility. With them out of the way, I spot the same fire suppression system that we manipulated to open the door last time. Sure enough, the same method of egress that we used before will now allow us to enter this new facility. Big ups to Arson here on the channel. If the game has a central hub, well, it's the terminus, but if it has two hubs, I'd throw in Av'Sal. All these holotechs we've uncovered are in service of completing the store of information this ancient civilization still has left to hide. Each important Avsomic location has some number of them within it, and when you first encounter one, its entry here in this facility becomes available to you, though mostly to tell you if you've discovered all the entries or not. If you haven't, it tells you that more can be discovered here. If you found them all, then it gives you an actual summary of the info you learned at that place. Among the holotexts in this place is one that catches my eye. Someone by the name of Achet talks about communication issues with a ship called the Aphelion. It's abundantly clear the significance of this vessel, and that communication with it is vitally important. Could I manage to find some remnant of the Empire aboard this ship? I doubt if it's still in service, but at the very least I suppose that the wreck of it could contain some important information, especially if this ship is as important as the text makes it out to be. The only problem here is that there's a lot of ocean surrounding Drehmal. This thing could literally be anywhere. Towards the back of this facility is another room that seems to be a lab of some kind. There's a bunch of tech we can't interact with strewn about the room, but obviously the most interesting thing is the large glass dome housing a tall rod. If you fucking laugh at that, I swear to God. The text in the room explains to us that this is actually the hilt of some kind of weapon, being kept under tight security and split apart for an additional layer of protection. The document makes no specific mention of where the other pieces are located, only that they are in secure R&D locations. It's being stored like this until they're capable of charging it. I don't know how you'd have the technology to build a weapon but be unable to charge it, but there's a lot about this place I don't really understand, so I'm willing to let it go for the time being. I mean, it's not like there's anything I can do to claim the hilt for myself. We're put into adventure mode upon entering this place, so I can't just break the glass and steal the thing. Even if I could, I don't know how I'd go about assembling it, especially considering I don't know what it is. Without a doubt, I need to track down more Avsomic sites of interest, as there are an unknown number of pieces to whatever the hell this weapon is. Could it have anything to do with the scythe that figure in the Stasis facility was carrying? We have a ton of information to digest, but not a ton of leads to go off of. I know that somewhere out there lies the missing pieces of this weapon. I even know they're in other places like this one, but given how large the continent is, that's not really narrowing it down. There are a number of other terms that I can tell are important, but don't mean anything to me at this moment in time. The holotexts often feature highlighted words, a clear indicator of their significance. You basically have a built-in Cliff Notes if you're a lazy fuck. But we're better than that. Now that we've begun the main quest, the only way we're going to learn more is by exploring. The game will occasionally give us guidance on where to go and what to do, but that will only happen after we have activated enough of these towers to be given a message in the same vein as the one we received upon entering the terminus for the first time. We'll be on our own for a while to piece together the story by traversing the map, so naturally the question becomes, where do we go? I continue to scour the ruins for anything else I could take with me. I managed to find a couple leftover supplies from the Mi'kmari that I killed, but there's nothing substantial left here anymore. We've likely already found everything Avsohm left behind. Another path catches my eye as I prepare to depart Av'Sal, leading away from the Empire's capital. I cross this ruined bridge and set off along the other side of the river. After entering the mountains and claiming another tower, I eventually come across one of the last remnants of Drehmal worship, the Drehua Temple. For a god who hasn't done anything in a couple thousand years, they sure do keep a nice temple for him. The main building houses an altar to the Divine Serpent, and we can actually make offerings to them here and receive their favor in a form of a couple different rewards. The other major area is where all the priests, no idea if they're priests or not, but just roll with it, have their living quarters. Also housed here is a collection of stories about Drehmal that read like fables. Each story involved Drehmal teaching some kind of lesson. In the Parable of the Lakebed, a Drehmari laments that he feels as though the work he does pales in comparison to Drehmal, who teaches him that his work is no less important, even if the scope is smaller. Parable of the Riverside Crag teaches us not to steal, stopping a thief from taking food and medicine from someone who ends up being a healer sent to help cure the malefic plague. Parable of the Stone Tablet teaches the importance of history, and why it's our duty to record it. People may be transient, but history persists. It's because of this history that the nun is able to help her village from running out of water. In the last story, Parable of the Orchard, we get an account of what is very likely the last sighting of Drehmal. This story teaches us the importance of patience, but is more substantial to me as Drehmal explains that they have taught the people all they can, and depart for their resting place at the Primal Caverns. Hidden underneath a green carpet in this same room is a hidden area containing one last story, Parable of the Worm. This story tells us of how Drehmal rose to divinity, starting as a lowly worm and being beset on all sides by competing voices and ideas. One voice insists they should take what is theirs and rise to their destiny, where the other insists they are not worthy of such a position. Another worm tells them that though they may become divine, it will not stop the inexorable tide of death. In the end, they will still be claimed. None of this bothers the small worm, however, content to wait until the time is right to meet their true destiny, unfazed by the heckling of others. The two voices then go to war, the one that destroys the realm, and it's during this collapse of the primal tree that Drehmal ascends to their current incarnation. I find these stories fascinating for their characterization of Drehmal as an individual. It's unlikely we'll see them awaken in our lifetime, but assuming these are true stories, we do still get a picture of them formed from the short period of time that they were active in this world. Drehmal is a kind and patient individual, content to fill the niche that has been thrust upon them. They may not be a perfect being, admitting that they have their own constraints much like the Drehmari, but they still attempt to do their best nevertheless. Drehmal seems to fear little. They do not worry about their own obsolescence when their work is done. They are content with what they've accomplished, in much the same way they were content before their ascension. Of all the temples we'll visit, I think Drehua Temple is most fascinating for exactly this reason. The Last Divine is very unique in the way that I picture typical gods in a fantasy setting. Drehmal has a very hands-off approach to this world and their involvement with it. Most fantasy gods tend to work from afar, but Drehmal has essentially completed their work. Those who worship them are a little frustrated because their god hasn't communicated with them in a very long time. We get glimpses of this in the journal of a devotee in the Primal Caverns. While I will encounter other temples for both aspects and deities, none of them bear discussing as much as I feel this one does. As fascinating as this temple is, the road leads to a dead end. I could wander off into the woods and probably die, but I think I'll stick to the main road for now. Returning towards New Drabule, I see a sign that points in the direction of some place called Gozak. I hope this is another town that might help me start to make sense of this world that I've forgotten, and maybe I can start to get my bearings again. Deciding that there's nothing left for me in New Drabule, I set off towards Gozak. The North Heartwood is a verdant and lush forest that looks absolutely beautiful as long as you're not standing under the canopy of all the dark oak trees and being attacked 24/7. Deep within the heart of the woods is a small, admittedly somewhat unremarkable, town of Gozak. There's not a ton of information we can glean from this place, but one thing I want to focus on is a journal that chronicles the hunting of Great Beast Moose. The book is a pretty detailed recounting of the hunting party that was pursuing Moose and ultimately kills him after a great struggle. Each member has their own reasons for wanting to kill the beast, but what I find most interesting is that this accounting of events tells us where they slayed him. My immediate first thought was whether or not I could find this place, and even if I did, what would even be there? Seeing as I currently have no leads to solving the mystery of Av'Sal and the Empire writ large, why the hell not, right? The book tells us they've tracked him to the western shore of North Heartwood, so that's where I've decided to head. It's not the most helpful set of directions, however, it's really just a singular direction. I'm not even clear what I expect to find when I get to the site of his death. The corpse of the great beast is undoubtedly long gone, and anything left behind by the hunting party is likely rusted beyond repair, if it even still remains there. If the Meek Mari have raided Av'Sal, I imagine someone has probably taken anything of significance from this place. As I aimlessly wander through the forest, contemplating the point of this endeavor, I am interrupted by stumbling into the cavern. This cavern is so much more awe-inspiring than I had anticipated. I expected a grey, lifeless, dark cave that had been long since abandoned in the wake of Moose's death. I feel as though Moose has given this place new life, even after his death. Obviously, I have to drop down and inspect this tower, which I presume to be a remnant of the hunting party. Inside the ground floor is a singular chest, which, to my surprise, is not actually empty, but instead contains a magical item, the Hard Axe. Now seems like a good a point as any to talk about legendary items. Throughout the map, in places of great significance, you can come across legendary weapons and gear. Each one has a custom texture, as well as some kind of unique effect that it grants or utilizes. The Hard Axe grants haste when we break logs. It also has increased attack damage and knockback resistance, but has a slower attack speed and decreases our ability to move. We've already covered a couple of the ways the game incentivizes us to explore around, but I think this is the most convincing reason. You can traverse the map and find towers without having to do any real exploring. You can get a vague sense of where each tower is located by using the map in the terminus and just sort of wandering in that direction. If you want to find the most powerful gear to progress through the game, and trust me, we're gonna need it, then you have to just explore random places. You could argue the game was attempting to lead us here through the hunting party book, but not every legendary item works this way, and there are 30 of them. We'll also talk about another type of item that works in a similar fashion later on, but I like the fact that Drehmal has such a variety of things to discover, as it increases your incentive to explore. You obviously have to explore to a degree in order to unlock story progression, but if you want to access a shulker box or a number of the other specialty items via trading, you need to find runic catalysts. Even if you're just here for weapons and combat, if you want access to the cool shit, you gotta be willing to go on a scavenger hunt. This is definitely not the only legendary item I'm going to come across in this playthrough, but I probably will not mention all of them. I want to focus on the important ones, but they definitely do not all matter for the sake of the narrative. I also want to encourage you to find some of them for yourself. I think I end up finding less than a third of them on this playthrough. I decide to do a little sightseeing around the cavern before ultimately returning back to Gozak to sort out my inventory and food supply. The question now shifts back to figuring out what to do. Gozak resides slightly off the main road. One direction is the way we came, leading back to New Drehmal and Av'Sal, while the other path leads to somewhere called the Verdant Labyrinth. I do love getting lost in a good maze, and while I'm ambivalent on the color green, I think my love for the former offsets my apathy for the latter. In actuality, this is the only remaining road that I'm aware of. All the other ones have turned up dead ends, and with any luck, this labyrinth hides some secret that I can uncover. Okay, so apparently Verdant Labyrinth is code for big-ass, fucky-ass mountain range. There's also not much here of significance. There's another outpost occupied by Meek Mari, and it is located in this sick-ass hanging tower, but the only thing of substance I found here was death, and I wasn't really looking for that. Crossing a small wooden bridge, I find that the road diverges yet again. One way leads to the Black Jungle and Furtide, the other to Spearhead Forest and Mossfield. I'm basically picking at random at this point in time, so I just decide to make my way to Mossfield and see what I can learn there, and just come back here and go the other way once I feel I've gone as far as I can. While there's a lot of grey rocks for somewhere that calls itself Verdant, the labyrinth part's pretty accurate. It takes me a while to head in the right direction. I do eventually manage to escape this mountainous maze and end up in a boreal forest. The road finally takes me to the town of Mossfield, but I learned something that makes me think there may actually be more to this place. Mossfield used to be the former Insohmic capital. I mean, with a name like that, how could you not have my attention? I wonder how much they have to do with the Avsomic Empire, if anything at all. Still, information is information, even if it bears no importance to the Empire. I'll give them this, Mossfield is an accurate name. I have yet to figure out what's new about this place. All these buildings are definitely showing their age. I realize that I'm running low on food, and decide to let some cook while I look around and see what the other people have to say. Well, not literally, villagers don't talk, but the villagers have journals. Why am I explaining this to you? Inside of what I believe to be someone's home is a book titled The Mystery of Castle Hovhidshire. The book talks about the titular castle and how it used to be the site of the Insohmic Council, which the book describes as their greatest governing force of the Third Avim. The site of the castle serves as a monument to the castle's namesake, Hovhidshire Myric. I admit that I have somewhat buried the lead on this story, as the account begins with the author saying they visited the Hovhidshire crater, not the castle. Later on, it also explains that the whole thing was just removed. We also get directions to this place should we elect to visit it ourselves. No explanation is given for why the castle vanished. One day it was there, and the next it wasn't. Given that we've already heard tell of one vanishing act, I figure it's worth investigating this place to see what it looks like, so we'll add Hovhidshire Crater to our list of places to visit while I continue to search the town for clues. On an unrelated note, I finally figured out why this is New Mossfield. The Mossfield Library has a book literally called Old Mossfield, which explains that the town we see now used to be the powerhouse capital of the Order of Insohm, the site of which is located east of the town, which now lives in the shadow of its predecessor. I can only imagine what this place used to look like, as the book claims that the city was at one point the largest in Drehmal history. Instability and riots ultimately wiped out the city, leaving only the Insohmic Library left standing, now a relic of the Third Avim. While I'm not sure how the city will compare to the ruins we encountered at Av'Sal, the fact that the library is still standing may yet be of note for us. If this place was as important during the Third Era as the town claims it was, then maybe they have record of our fallen empire, or maybe they even know what happened to it. Let's go ahead and add this to our list of places to visit as well, but I really want to check out this crater first, even if it's further away, as I am much more intrigued by a suddenly disappearing castle. According to the story, the site of this incident is near the labyrinth's foothills somewhere to the west. I'm not imbued with confidence that we'll find this place easily, but what's the worst that can happen? You know, I find it odd for a place that used to hold a lot of power, there's no roads that leads to the former seat of their council. Wherever the hell Hovhidshire Castle is, it's not along any main road. When I come back to the entrance of the labyrinth, in order to follow the instructions in the book, I just have to start wandering the foothills of the mountain. No road, no plan, just kind of vibing my way through the dense foliage. I honestly feel like I don't get a ton of chances to just explore close to the ground like this, for reasons we'll get into later. It's kind of fun to just wander through the forest trying to find something I only have a vague direction for. Fortunately, a giant crater is hard to miss. I'm not gonna lie, I was kind of expecting it to be perfectly spherical, like something supernatural had just lifted the whole thing out of the ground. Instead, it does look a lot more natural. I do still get the impression that whatever castle used to be here was almost just picked up and removed, but it seems a lot less deliberate, clean? I'm struggling to think of the right word, but if it wasn't for the circumstances of its disappearance, it could feel a lot more natural. Across the way, I spot a little monument that has been built in the ruins of Insohm's capital, and closer inspection reveals that this is a tomb for Hovhidshire. The sign also notes his companion Oldva. This appears to be the resting place of only Hovhidshire. Well, kind of. The only thing in here is his hammer. I have to assume that Hovhidshire disappeared with his castle. The plaque doesn't say what happened to either of the two masters of Insohm. I could jump face first into the crater, but this too looks to be another dead end. I'm not really sure what I would expect to find down there. I did get a cool looking hammer though. The ruins of Old Mossfield are impressive. Not Av'Sal impressive, but I'll give them credit. One thing I think you can struggle with under the limits of Minecraft is the passage of time. There's not really a great way to indicate that one set of ruins is older than another set of ruins. You're working from a limited block palette. You have cobblestone, cracked stone bricks, mossy stone bricks, and mossy cobblestone. You can also toss in some vines if you're feeling spontaneous. With a lack of variety, you can't very well distinguish the passage of time from one period to another. Case in point is that Av'Sal has been abandoned for some 1,000 years. But the ruins of it look similar to the ones here in Old Mossfield. There are design differences, they have slightly different building styles, but you can only make them look so old. It is worth noting that these ruins look similar by design. Insohm had a thing for Avsomic tech, the original LARPers if you will. Along the coast sits the only building left standing. As described, it's the Insohmic Order's library. The undead members of their order continue to defend this place decades if not centuries after its collapse. There are a couple interesting books stored here. Insohm has been obsessed with finding Avsomic technology, and nothing is more tantalizing than the Aphelion. Malus, who had been conquering the West, is also seemingly interested in finding the flagship. The technology the ship houses is quite advanced, which is a substantial compliment considering all the other Empire tech we've seen up to this point. It's also reported to house the throne of the Emperor. I've seen a couple of airships on my journey, but nothing that's ornate or royal enough to indicate that I have passed the Aphelion on my journey. It's clear that this ship is a storehouse of information, and if we can find it ourselves, then I wager we get a lot of our questions answered that way. The journal concludes that the airship is likely at the bottom of the ocean, which is nothing more substantial than we already knew. Unfortunately, the revelation that it's an airship does mean that the scope of places it could be has drastically increased. But if all these people were tracking it, surely someone has a lead on its location. The only other thing of substance here is a journal about the other leader of Insohm, Ultha. Ultha was a big proponent of uncovering and wielding Avsomic tech, and reported to have found a vault of theirs off the coast of Kasai. The knowledge inside is reported to have driven Ultha insane, and he locked himself inside as a result. I make a note of this place because I'm definitely checking out anything Avsomic in nature. If I get back to a major city, I can probably find a map that tells me where Kasai is. To save us all a bit of time here, I decide that instead of heading north to Highfall, I will turn back south and head to Furtide. Ideally, I can get to the coast to try to start finding Kasai, and a jungle sounds cooler than a tundra. I don't need white or blue mana. It's okay, sometimes I just write jokes for myself. This does mean I have to trek all the way back through the labyrinth to head the other direction, but oh, looks like I'm already there. I don't think I can state enough just how amazing I think the map is. There are so many cool looking locations, I'm a little sad we have something of a story to talk about, because I kinda just wish I could show you what all these locations look like. Unfortunately, I'd rather talk about the story, so here we are. Speaking of here we are, Furtide. The absolute bane of my existence anytime I try to run this map on a server. This isn't a relevant detail, but it keeps happening, so now you all get to hear about it. There's not too much I want to make specific mention of here in Furtide. I think the only thing I want to draw explicit attention to is this abandoned building. A book in the upstairs floor tells us this place used to be an office for Green Serpent, one of the 3 branches of the Empire. Green Serpent is largely mercantile in nature, dealing in trade and economics. Green Serpent technically predates the Empire, but it still became deeply involved with the other 2 branches, Blue Exodus and Red Dawn. I'm not exactly clear what the other 2 branches do, but seeing that Blue Exodus protects Green Serpent shipments, I have to assume it's some form of security detail. As for Red Dawn, I can't even fathom a guess. They could literally be transporting anything for them. Of perhaps greater interest is the massive temple that I have to cross a very ornate bridge in order to get to. This is the Kiln, the temple of the goddess Virtuo, my personal favorite deity. As a result, I will definitely be bringing her offerings to increase my devotion to her. While I make these offerings, it's worth going over what the hell I'm talking about. See, I kind of skipped this intentionally when we were at the Drehua temple, but this game has a devotion mechanic. Each deity has items that they are associated with, items they want to receive. At their corresponding temples, you can place these items on an altar to increase your devotion to the corresponding aspect. As your devotion increases, the deities will give you items as signs of their favor. This varies from god to god, and ranges from things like blocks, potions, food, and most importantly, relics. Each god has a relic that does something when you hold it in your offhand. They have tiers based on how strong your devotion is. The first one we get from Virtuo in this instance will give us the relic Purifying Light, which in its base form gives us a plus 0.007 additional movement speed. There are 3 stages of this item, topping out at plus 0.028 movement speed. This may not sound like a lot, but it's very noticeable. There are 14 total relics you can obtain. Technically 4 of them come from the same deity, but they're all different. This is a neat mechanic, but it does run up against the game's perpetual issue when it comes to existing in Minecraft: inventory management. You get a lot of items while trying to get the max level relic from a deity, and sometimes the thing you get doesn't stack. Many gods give you multiple potion rewards, and Virtuo here gives us 32 melon seeds that I have 0 use for, so just gonna chuck all that shit in a nice pile right over there. You also don't need to keep the old relics whenever you get a new one, as in almost all cases, they're all strict improvements. There are a couple of these devotion rewards that are worth it. Virtuo does give us a book of mending that'll come in handy later, so that's something. I also hope you enjoy seeing me hold random items in my offhand for the rest of the story, because that's not going away anytime soon. While wandering around in the Kiln, I spot a cave near the back of the temple. Hiding inside it is something interesting, the same Avsomic color scheme that I've grown accustomed to. Why on earth a site like this is so close to something as important as Virtuo's temple is beyond me, but upon walking inside it, it seems clear to me that this is some kind of experiment. The strange pulsating thing seems to be the focus of this test, dubbed Project Archangel. Whatever this thing is seems to react strongly to divine magic, which I guess this is why they've built the lab where they did. The goal of this project is to fire primal energy at this thing in a place full of divine magic in an effort to remove the layers of it. I don't know what happens when you open it, and given that it's still here, I'd wager neither did Avsohm. I say that like I'm not a part of the Empire. I may not remember my time there, but it is abundantly clear that we were somewhat of a fairly important standing considering the fact that we ended up in the Stasis facility. Sometimes I wonder what we did for the Empire. I have yet to see my name crop up in any kind of documentation. Seeing as how they've yet to complete the final test, I decide to go ahead and just do it for them. Despite the fact that this tech is 1,000 years old, it's all still in perfect working order. The primal energy starts to cause fractures in the object, presumably chipping away at the layers of it. The system ultimately decides to shut down lest we risk implosion, but the core still erupts in a burst of energy, producing, well, I don't know actually. It looks like an archway, presumably divine in nature given our location. Nothing happens when I walk through it, and none of these journals tell us anything about what they expected should they actually manage to get this far. The only book we haven't read is a conversation between an officer and Virtuo's Grand Pontiff. She fears that the Empire is trying to mess with shit they have no business messing with. Kaiv gave mortals the ability to understand and utilize magic, and we're kinda pushing the boundaries on that. It also appears that Virtuo was part of this war against Malus. It seems as though all our gods do not get along. The Pontiff argues that a drive and want for power is a recipe for disaster, but I don't think this message stuck with Emperor Dren, or the Empire at large for that matter. This object is clearly very significant, but I just don't know how to use it. We seem to have stumbled across more information that we simply can't understand right now, so I suppose we'll head back to the Kiln and decide what to do next. At least, that would have been the plan. While accidentally wandering into the massive pool at the center of the temple, I spot a singular, out-of-place block of quartz that doesn't match the rest of the wall. Mining it reveals this to be Virtuo's chambers. I assume that's the case, at least based on the size of everything in here. I definitely should not be in here, but nobody else is either, so it's not like they can kick me out. I spot another one of those weird arches, except this one is broken and chained off, so I doubt it actually does anything. I'm not going to learn anything about it here either. In Virtuo's bedroom, we can spot a journal of hers in a chest, and it's probably one of my favorite books in the entire map. It chronicles Virtuo's struggles dealing with not just her own brother, but with her people as well. Virtuo has spent her life dealing with the flaws of the world, of trying to see the beauty in anything regardless. Malus is content to spread war and destruction, and she questions why she can't do the same. We learn that Malus clawed out one of Virtuo's eyes, leaving a permanent scar. Virtuo asks why she is expected to purify his ailing soul. Why should she have to take the high road? Virtuo says she's forgiven him, but she can't forgive herself. Doing nothing when Avsohm fell in a day, doing nothing when Malus waged war and her Virmari led the defense while she stayed behind. The Virmari is a race of people that are modeled after Virtuo herself and have historically been her devoted followers. We have very few chances to encounter them on our journey, which the reason why isn't very apparent right now, but it will come up. Virtuo decides that she intends to commune with the aspects on Ytaj and departs this place. Seeing someone so powerful lose faith not just in herself, but in the very system she represents is unnerving, to say the least. Virtuo is supposed to be the aspect of purity and peace, and this journal definitely does not embody that. Malus's cruelty has scarred her in more than one way, even if he seemed remorseful for his actions after the fact. Gods in mythology and fantasy typically war with one another, but there's something different about irreparably scarring a divine being. It just seems unthinkable to me. There is, however, another detail here that I think is more significant, something that she mentions almost as a passing note in the larger point she's trying to make. Avsohm fell in a day. We have a fair amount of context for how prolific the Empire was by now. I mean, they managed to set up an experimental site right next to the divine temple of a god. The towers reach far and wide across the continent, and the technology still functions 1,000 years later. Yet for all their influence, and all their technology, the Empire fell in a day. In much the same way Insohm's Horvidshire castle disappeared, leaving no trace of it or its master behind. I can't even fathom how something like this would be possible, but we've only scratched the surface when it comes to understanding Avsohm. An empire so powerful that 1,000 years later, the citizens of Drehmal can only hope to scavenge their technology, if they can even begin to understand it. Insohm lived in the shadow of the Empire, and now we're living in the shadow of Insohm, if you can even call it that. Staring off into the sea, I can only think of journeying to Kasai and attempting to find that vault. During my time in Furtide, I did manage to figure out that it's the northwest edge of the continent. This is going to be an incredibly long trip, but anything Avsomic bears exploring, so I decide to sail all the way there in my tiny ass boat. I'll spare you the details of my fairly uneventful journey, but I do manage to come across the island, with a little outpost built in front of a large vault door. I set up camp before I see that the vault has been opened and later resealed by the Insomic Order. Notably not by the Order of Master Uldva. Upon opening the vault, I immediately see why. This soldier is armed with gear that wildly outclasses anything I possess, its armor unlike anything I've seen before. He definitely does not get the better of me, and I kill him immediately without issues. Please trust me. There's actually not a lot of stuff housed within this vault. Uldva's bowblade can be found inside this chest, which begs the question on whether or not that soldier was Uldva. Given that they looked Avsomic in nature, I'm inclined to say no. A book in this vault chronicles the need to create such vaults to store information, citing the censorship of information around the Yavhlix site. These vaults were created for this information to be kept available to higher-ranking members of the Empire. Yavhlix. Another name in a long line of terms I don't recognize, and yet inexplicably fills me with dread in a way I can't describe. Given that information about its primary energy collection facility has to be kept secret from lower-ranking members of the Empire, this mountain must be important to our understanding of the Empire. Unfortunately, this journal makes no mention of what Mount Yavhlix does or where it is, but figuring out is quickly becoming a very high priority for me. Feeling satisfied that I've gained something from this vault, I venture into Kasai in order to find the nearest tower to warp back to the terminus. Upon entry, Avsis asks us to reset another computer elsewhere in the world. We're given another compass and sent on our way. This leads to what I consider to be the most visually interesting site on the map. This place is a building out of time. Actually, I guess it's a collection of buildings. Sal'Mevir features a number of structures that are in varying states of decay, as well as some floating platforms. The reason why, to cut to the chase a little bit, is because the place is a testing site for the Stasis technology that will ultimately come to power the facility we woke up in. That same tech has been employed here in an attempt to preserve the place. And I mean, it does seem to be working at least a little bit. I don't know what this place looked like when it originally went into effect, but much of the core structure does remain. Resyncing the computer terminal will allow us to read the logs in this place and hopefully give us a couple answers to why we ended up in stasis for 1,000 years. Very quickly you'll learn that while this place seems abandoned, it's anything but. It's filled with automaton soldiers and weird little baby zombie shits called entropic sycophants. We can first learn that survey drones had historically been used to scout out potential sources of primal energy when they came across a mountain with power unlike anything they'd ever seen before. The tear that resided within became the basis of the primary energy collection facility, Mount Yavhlix. This is mostly information we already knew, but it does emphasize just how powerful this place is. The more striking feature here is obviously the weird hourglass thing that sits at the center of all these little towers. Compared to everything else around it, this building has a much more mechanical vibe. The other thing is the exceptionally large tower that sits further away from everything else, which is where I try to head next. Unfortunately, as I approach the doorway, I realize that it's blocked off by bedrock, which in this context has been renamed to Veilstone. It will come up again later. I see no immediate indicators that I can even open this door, so I guess we'll stick to poking around elsewhere for now. I decide to get a closer look at this large machine, including the genius move of deciding to stand directly inside of it, but thankfully nothing happens to me when I do so. A nearby building contains a levitating elevator system as well as a holotext of a worker here hypothesizing what would happen if you threw a primal pearl into the temporal engine, but lamenting that they probably wouldn't be allowed to do so. I've been collecting primal pearls from chests as I go about this place, so I could definitely test this theory for myself, but I'd like to finish exploring before I do so. In a different building, we can learn about the contingency plan, putting some number of officers in stasis in the event of some massive catastrophe. We can even see the animal experimentation they were conducting on this pig, still frozen in time forevermore. The journal of a janitor named Sandi can also be found here, in which we can witness them snooping around and eavesdropping on the conversations of other workers and officers, and they manage to learn a little more about Mount Yavhlix, mainly that it's located to the northeast of the continent. We also know it's gotta be somewhere cold, due to the cause of something known as the Frostfang catastrophe. I don't spot any other holotext or journals in any of the remaining towers, so the question remains. What happens if you throw a primal pearl into the temporal engine? This cannot be a good idea, but I'm fresh out of those at this point, so the only thing left to do is hope that this doesn't go cataclysmically wrong as I summon the courage to toss this thing. Immediately, it seems like nothing changes. I'm met with a loading screen, but otherwise I am exactly where I left off. That is, until I step outside. Everything is covered in sand at this point, the trees gone. This landscape is barren and silent. Even the automatons are no longer here. The facility is in even worse shape than it was when we arrived. The stasis that maintains this place clearly doesn't work forever, and this place is in an even sorrier state than it was before. It's quiet here in a way that's deeply humbling to me. The dead trees, the dark crystals, what feels like a dead horizon, all work in service of a dead world. I see no stars. I see no moons. The sky is just a featureless gradient. The one thing I do spot is a massive hole in the side of the building that was previously inaccessible to me. I try and work my way over there, but this palace is even harder to navigate now than it was before. The floating bridges are now gone, which limits the number of available paths I can take. I've also been put into adventure mode again, so I can't just build my way over to it. I take an absolute leap of faith that I just barely survive. This was pure dumb luck. And I try to make my way over there as quickly as possible, but unfortunately my time in this place is cut short, and I return to our original point in time, stuck in a tree. This gives me a clear objective, however. I can get inside the building by traveling into the future and just wait to be sent back to the past. How am I going to get out? We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. I re-enter the machine, toss the pearl, and attempt to navigate my way back to the large building. I choose a different path this time because I'm afraid of accidentally dying if I try and go the same way as before. It may take a little longer, but I still end up inside this place with time to spare. Back in the present, I thankfully have a lever to open the door blocking me from entering in the first place. We managed to locate one of the pieces of the weapon we found under Av'Sal too. Holotext explains that the weapon has been kept separate due to a lack of somewhere to charge it without causing problems. Given the way that Avsohm has talked about the power that resides within Yavhlix, I do have some concerns about this thing. At least we know there are only two pieces, and the other is located in the Exodus Depot. Whatever that is. Well, if we stumble into one fragment, we may as well stumble our way into another and claim this fragment for now. I also like the detail that Sal'Mevir is mad about having to house this fragment due to the amount of power it consumes to keep it in containment. I wonder if that's why the place has been slowly falling apart, is because of the fragment's issues. At the top of this building, we receive what is probably the single most important item we can find anywhere on the map. Avsohm coal. This is the game's version of the Elytra, and before you attempt to take off and soar through the air on firework rockets, there are a couple major stipulations. One is that upon activating the wings, you're given slow falling, effectively preventing you from traveling at high speeds by gliding. The second is that you can't use firework rockets with this version of Elytra. Well, you can, but I'll let you figure out the results of that on your own time. This is a long-winded explanation of the fact that the Avsohm call is more equivalent to the paraglider from Breath of the Wild. While it's difficult to achieve any real speed while gliding, it's not impossible to do so. You can reset the slow falling effect by taking the wings off, which means that having your wings or armor in your hotbar is a very important movement tool. With this discovery, I suppose we're done here. I decide to return to the terminus so we can figure out where to go from here. I find myself studying the map, somewhat lost on where to head next. I don't have a clear lead without the terminus asking me to reset a specific terminal. So here I stand, pondering the map. The lit up markers are towers I've already claimed, and I come to assume the iron bars are ones I haven't. To the north of the map is a tower that sits in an area marked with black concrete. That has to be the mountain, right? That has to be Yavhlix. This place is equal parts ominous and important, and yet I feel as though I know nothing about it. So let's just go there. I know vaguely which direction to head, and I know where I currently am. How hard can it be? I leave the terminus and just start heading north, immediately getting sidetracked by this floating purple orb hovering between two peaks. The height this provides me actually gives me a view of a small town. I figured that since I'm already heading that way, I may as well check it out. Upon flying close, I am haunted by the same object that sought to taunt me back in the Kiln. This one is constructed the exact same way as the other two I saw, made out of quartz, but the town also has similar structures made out of wood. Of course, more shocking is that these people are literal dragons. I mean, I guess the Drehmal have antlers, but like, they're dragons. I've seen some weird people, but this definitely takes the cake. We learn that these people are the Tamari, this village is Hevlac, and we also learn of another group of people called the Scalebound of Naharja. I have yet to see this name appear on any map in Drehmal, but maybe this story is ancient, or maybe there are hidden peoples. We learn of a story about the Aspect Tethlane, which tells us of an individual who was known for sowing fear into the hearts of people in order to control them. The Wingcrafters, one such sect of Termari, had been followers of Tethlane but have since disavowed him. There are also rumors that something has been attacking people in the woods. More often than not, they just go missing. They believe this to be the work of Tethlane, citing his 8 glowing orbs, his eyes. Surely if Tethlane were still alive, the Aspects would know about it, right? How could Tethlane conduct these attacks in secrecy? And what would even be the point of this? I'm doubtful that Tethlane is alive, but not so confident that I'm willing to dismiss the possibility altogether. There's something wrong with this world. A sickness I have started to notice has taken foothold in all the little gaps the closer I look into things. Regardless, I can safely consider this a successful detour, a rarity on my journey at this point. What follows is a long and arduous journey across the world of Drehmal, stopping in larger cities and buildings I come across along my way, gathering better gear and resources as I do so. As I work my way further north, I start to come across the tundra, effectively meaning I have completed a loop from Mossfield all the way back to Highfall tundra. As long as we're in the area, we might as well try to find the city of Highfall. Highfall is an appropriate name for this place. The castle was probably more impressive once upon a time, but man, this place is depressing as shit. If the music didn't clue you into that fact, then the sky, gray color palette, number of ruined buildings, and overall atmosphere should probably be the nail in the coffin. I wander around the town for a little bit, but I don't find anything of particular interest, so let's head up to the castle instead. The castle would be more of the same if it were not for one singular iron door. It appears as though it leads to nothing more than a storage closet, but the whispering I hear from the iron trap door in the corner probably indicates that this is not the case. In a move that demonstrates a total disregard for my safety, I just decide that I'm going to descend down this long ladder, working my way through what appears to be a sewer system. I follow this for a short distance until it gives way to a massive cave with a large fortress inexplicably resting at the center of it. I'm not clear what the intention of this place is, but we're not about to figure it out either, because directly behind this is a seemingly endless void housing every mob known to ever exist ever. I want to see how far this thing goes, but in order to do that, I'm gonna have to run like hell. Yeah, this didn't really work out the way I wanted it to. I do eventually make my way to the end, where I find an almost star-like eye staring back at me through the endless darkness. At the center of it is a strange compass called the Compass of Nihility. Given where I found it, yeah, I'd say that feels right. Continuing in my trend of detours, I decide that, naturally, we're gonna follow it. It does at least lead me to go north-ish. To save you all from another long-winded explanation of the fact that I then walked somewhere else, the compass leads to a lone house, seemingly abandoned and nestled in the foot of a large hill in the middle of this frozen landscape nearly devoid of any life. A book within this house that I find fascinating was clearly written by someone on the edge of sanity. It claims that whatever caused the massive hole underneath Highfall was the same thing that ended Avsohm. Holes. Endless holes. Consuming and encompassing all. It describes a creature that kills things with its glare, turning them into nothing. Capital N, nothing. That's a little concerning. The author believes that whatever this thing is, it's not working alone, claiming that it answers to a higher power. Could one of the aspects be behind this? One of the deities? I don't know, and the author does not attempt to guess either. Higher up still, another book expands further, claiming that there's likely another agent at work here, one they refer to as the Pawn. Something has been taking important Avsomic documents and destroying them. Again, the why is not immediately clear. These three beings, the monster, the Pawn, and their master, are supposedly responsible for Avsohm's downfall. Malus had been warring with the Empire at some point, but even he wasn't capable of destroying the entire thing in a single day. So what the hell was? At the very top of the house, I finally spot what the compass was leading us to, a chest containing the Nihilist notes. A weathered scroll with refreshingly explicit instructions. Whatever scavenger hunt I'm on converges at Mount Yavhlix. With this revelation, I suppose we have no more incentive to delay finding the mountain. As we head further north, the tundra slowly gives way to more and more mountains. I don't know exactly where I am anymore, and I begin to worry that I have maybe passed the mountain at this point. We've seen a lot of them, and I have no way of knowing which one might be Mount Yavhlix. I know that it houses their primal energy facility, but I have no way to measure primal energy in order to locate it. So instead, we just keep wandering further and further north. I guess I know that if I hit the ocean, I've gone too far. By this point, I've left all signs of life behind. The land has totally transformed into an Arctic wasteland. While traversing this wasteland, I spot something that seems like a transport pipe, buried in the snow. If the facility at Mount Yavhlix collects primal energy, then there must be some method through which it's distributed to the Empire. I hope that by following it to its source, I'll have located the mountain. It turns out that I didn't need to worry so much about accidentally missing Mount Yavhlix. Upon even getting close, I can tell I'm in the right place. The music becomes a low humming sound. The hulking mountain stands in the distance. A number of connective pipes lead away from it. No doubt the exact distribution network I expected to find. Of course, the most noticeable thing is the door. A photo that we found in Av'Sal, the mysterious photo that survived 1,000 years at the seat of the Empire without ever being taken. Of course, it was leading us here. Notably, in the photo, the door was open, but now Veilstone prevents us from entering the mountain of our own accord. I had expected this place to be a technological marvel, inspiring awe within me. Instead, I feel empty. Instead, I feel nothing. A seal was put in place on this door some time ago, as noted by nearby holotext. It also explains that a blast of primal energy would be able to break the seal on the door. Helpful information if I knew how to do that. I want to know what happened here that warranted this place being sealed in the first place. Not only that, but also apparently required people to be stationed here as a precautionary measure. What exactly is this monster that bore a massive hole underneath Highfall? And what did it do here? What's really going on behind this door? I had thought that this place would be the fantastical apex of Avsomic technology, but now I worry about what breaking the seal will ultimately mean not just for me, but everyone on Drehmal. Elsewhere on the mountain, I spot a small, unassuming obelisk sitting there unceremoniously, waiting for me to find it. Tossing the nihilist notes on this block opens a seemingly bottomless hole. What lies below is a pitch-black maze filled with these disembodied heads dual-wielding hoes, my nickname in college. At the end of this maze sits a scythe, but not just any scythe. I recognize this weapon immediately. It's the same one that we saw the figure carrying all the way back in the Stasis facility. This weapon must have something to do with the Nothing and the Hole Monster, given the way in which we find out about it. What role does that figure play in all this? Is it the pawn? If so, why do all this? What's the point? However that figure came to possess this weapon is irrelevant, because it's mine now. I lost the footage of me obtaining it, so just use your imagination. Mythic weapons are interesting for a few reasons. Obviously, the most striking reason is that they have custom models, not just retexturing existing weapons. The other nice feature is that they're all unbreakable, so no need to worry about mending or unbreaking, and no having to repair them. Mythic weapons are a cut above legendary ones because each one has some kind of signature ability. Legendary items have static effects, as do mythic weapons, but each mythic weapon has an active ability that functions off a cooldown. Oblivion features the power of Force of Nothing, which lets me pick up mobs and chuck them high into the air, taking a shitload of fall damage on the way back down. Unfortunately, I'm only allowed to use this ability every 40 seconds. There are 8 of these in total, but I'll tell you now that we're only going to talk about 2 of them. Uncovering these items is one of the greatest incentives to exploration, as Oblivion demonstrates that you will have to go out of your way to find them. None of them are easy or obvious objectives. I encourage you to play the map for yourself and explore the depths of this world to collect them all, because they all have pretty unique abilities. Back in the Terminus, I'm reminded of a strange place I encountered during my extensive boat trip to the Avsomic Vault near Kasai. We've seen a lot of beautiful places, but this one is definitely not that. This is a land of sand, heat, and fire. It's the kind of place you'd expect to see Vader's fortress, not somewhere you'd want to live. The trek from Lorankal to the Carmine is a pretty long one, but it gives us an interesting slice of the different kinds of terrain that litter the world. In the far corner of the Carmine is the city of Rhaveloth. Rhaveloth is home to the Maelmari, another in our increasingly long list of species that inhabit this world. These people, as you might be shocked to learn, are shaped in the image of Lord Malus. There's a couple other places around the world we could have had the chance to run into the Maelmari, but here is where they are most prevalent. In case you haven't figured it out yet, these guys are a reskin of the piglins. That's why instead of trading scales, they trade in gold. It also means that to gain entry into this place without turning the game into a hack and slash, we've got to put on some gold attire. As we'll come to find, however, this isn't a flawless system. Rhaveloth is probably one of the places where the map runs up against the constraints of Minecraft the hardest. Piglins have a couple of embedded mechanics like attacking the player if they're not wearing gold. The other, far more annoying, is that opening a chest in their vicinity will also cause them to attack you. This is fine in bastions, but when you put them in the overworld in a town, it gets really annoying real fast. I enjoy the diversity of species that Drehmal has to offer, and the fact that the Maelmari deal in gold is a nice justification for the piglin mechanics. For the love of God, though, can I please not get attacked for opening my own shulker box? Rhaveloth is ultimately a pit stop on our actual journey. At the back of the city is yet another labyrinth constructed out of a series of mountains, except this one is far more lava-y than the previous one. The tighter pathways also mean this place is far more fitting of the title Labyrinth than the one we encountered earlier. Nevertheless, eventually we make our way out of one hell and into another. Welcome to the Hellcrags. Astute Minecraft fans might notice the inspiration for this place. I've not really talked much about the traditional gameplay of Minecraft up to this point, and there's a simple reason why. I don't care about it. But it's worth noting here that I have never once mentioned or tried to enter the Nether. That's because you can't do it. It's not allowed. Instead of the Nether, we have this place. Everything you could hope to obtain from the Nether is conveniently available here. Not that I've been doing much traditional Minecraft gameplay in order to care. I quite like that rather than attempting to recontextualize the Nether with an in-universe explanation, we've just excised it entirely. Every now and then we see examples of the game trying to break containment from its Minecraft shell. This is not the first example, nor would I consider it the most noteworthy, but it is important because it demonstrates that this is so much more than a typical adventure map. You can see the team's drive to branch off into other ideas, something that's definitely in the works. This place is obviously the domain of the Burnt God. We see his iconography in the form of a massive statue that heralds our arrival to his realm. The other obvious fact is that there are fucking ghasts everywhere, holy shit! At the center of the Hellcrags lies the Burnt Palace, the home of our eminent fiery lord. I gotta say though, it's awful quiet here considering we're doing a substantial amount of trespassing, or at least I feel like we are. This place is inhospitable, sure, but it's not really what I expect from the God of Chaos. Fortunately, the welcoming committee is here to try and help make up for that fact. Unfortunately for them, they forgot they can't fly. Killing the guards grants us access to the palace proper, which proves scarcely more occupied than the outside was. We can spot stray Maelmari here and there, and sometimes even soldiers, but I can kill as many of these guys as I like. Malus clearly isn't here. This means I get to start raiding his place for anything I like, and maybe along the way we uncover some divine gossip. Behind a door that seems to house some kind of large egg, I come across a journal that chronicles some information about Malus's war with Insohm. Most notably, their use of something called the Mother. Whatever this thing is, it's implied to be very powerful. Insohm had been scavenging Avsomic tech, but the Maelmari seem certain that the Mother will obliterate them anyways. As Malus appears to grow more distant from the palace, he seems to grow more distant with the idea of deploying this thing, culminating in his instructions to free the Mother, much to his people's dismay. This journal doesn't tell us why any of this happens, the author doesn't seem to understand it themselves. The Mother is presumably a creature, given the name and the way they talk about it, and I am a little concerned about a creature so strong that a god considers it a weapon, but the book provides no answers on the subject. Arguably more interesting is the way Malus is described in this book. Opting to release a powerful weapon is not how I envision the god being described, especially by the people who seem to work with him closely. Ascending to the top of the castle, we first run into one of Malus's generals. This is the second one we've encountered. We found the third back in the Temple to Malus in Rhaveloth. The first is reported to be out somewhere searching for Insomic secrets. Sorry to say, pal, I think I beat you to the punch on that one. In Malus's chamber, we can find a number of writings that have been done by him. A lot of what's been written has made little sense to me, but I think this might take the cake. Kaiv, bless his wisdom, summoned my sister and I to Ytaj. He decided that after what I had found on my trip to Zyvernt, he needed to confess. He told us what had truly happened. The Virun, the Maelrune, they disgust me. They set in motion this sick world. My sister feels so much regret for something she never did. I wish I could comfort her. I need some time to reflect. I have zero clue what the Virun, Maelrune, or Zyvrant are, and like so many before it, this book offers little in the way of an answer. Whatever Mael learned here disgusted him, a strange thing for the God of Chaos to say, but we've been seeing an increasing amount of that lately. In the other book, Malus expresses his regret at what he did to Virtuo. His refusal to wield the Mother, learning about his creation, it all seems to be weighing on him heavily. Mael has spread destruction and war throughout the world for centuries, but it seems he's had his fill when it comes to carnage. He never told Virtuo about his regret, and she never forgave him. The guilt continues to eat at him. He expresses growing contempt for his people and his lands. He no longer views any of it with pride. Having had enough of this world, Malus declares his intent to depart for Ytaj, only seeing fit to return to this place with the express purpose of leveling it to the ground. I think it's safe to assume the god has not returned to this realm since heading to whatever Ytaj is. On the balcony of his chambers is Malevolentia, his signature weapon, as depicted by the statue of him in the Hellcrags. I don't want to go into more detail now, but by the end of this game, Malus will be the character that I have the greatest interest in. He may not necessarily be my favorite character, but he is far and away the most interesting. The way in which he is at odds with his very purpose, the thing that drew people to him in the first place, is fascinating. This is also the second god we have seen undergo some kind of crisis of faith, and the second god we have seen formally abandon their people. There's an argument to be made here that we're actually 3 for 3 on this last subject. Whether or not Drehmal abandoned the Dremari is a subject we'll talk about later. We have more information we need to fit into this puzzle first. Malus has yet another one of these archways in an adjacent tower. Obviously they have some connection to the Divine, we could infer that at the Kiln. But this tells me that the formation of one of these in Project Archangel was not just an accident. It can't just be some form of worship either, as though the Termari have reason for such a thing, Mael does not. So it clearly does something, and my natural inclination is that it's some kind of gateway. Unfortunately, I have no idea how to open it, and Malus does not clarify if I'm right in my assessment, much less how it works. I continue to be taunted by these things at every turn, so thanks for that, I guess. Back in the Terminus, Absis has another request for us. The Exodus Citadel network terminal has been turned back on and needs to be reset. Time for another aimless trek through the wilderness, following an arrow like I'm brute forcing my way up the throat of the world in Skyrim. No, this hyper-specific example did not happen to me, why do you ask? This journey ends up leading us to the Nemaj Swamp, the perfect place to build infrastructure. I'm starting to think these Avsohm people didn't know what the hell they were doing. Of all the buildings within the Empire's control, this one might be in the worst state. Trees growing through the walls, vines covering the entire thing, water flooding the lower floors. This place barely resembles a building at all anymore. The labyrinthine nature of this place makes it hard to even find the terminal with the compass, but I do eventually spot it next to a sharp drop into an underground room. I know from the introductory guide to the Citadel that the vault is down there, so we just have to take a leap of faith down and... Oh, you put actual glass in the bottom of a pool of water. Oh, you fucking... I like that they put their little logo down here just in case you forgot where you were working. This seems like a small detail on first glance, but the holotext reveals that we actually need to rearrange the concrete in order to form a new rune circuit. This is a little tedious as a single player, and my pickaxe breaks halfway through, but even though a greater power is trying to stop me from entering, unfortunately they're not trying hard enough. A hidden doorway that is definitely OSHA approved reveals the entrance to the Exodus Vault, which is, suffice it to say, a little bigger than I had been anticipating. Upon entering for the first time, this place looks like it has managed to survive 1,000 years in pristine condition, but on closer inspection we realize this couldn't be further from the truth. A number of the rooms we can see from this walkway are flooded with water, algae, and seaweed, as well as this unfortunate soul who we immediately free from their body upon entry to the tower. I like to think this was a mercy. I'm not clear how to get out of this place anymore, so I decide to start looking for an exit before I rummage around, just in case. A massive vault door sits at the other end of the facility with a literal tank pointed straight at it. Apparently, if we can turn the tank on, it'll just start charging, so if we can get it turned back on, we can probably blast a hole in the door. The issue is, we can't get into either of these two garages because they're currently protected by barriers. I guess we'll just have to file this escape plan away for later. I almost immediately come into contact with the Citadel security force, these annoying aquatic security drones that are reskinned guardians. They're a pain, but they're relatively easy to dispatch. Beyond a flooded room, I managed to find a series of switches that kick the power back on in this place. The only problem is that in doing so, I have accidentally electrified the water. It's fine, I only fuck up and touch it a couple times, so no biggie. In what appears to be a war planning room, I get to look at this giant map with a bunch of marked points scattered across the continent. Some of them I immediately recognize. It's clear this magenta dot is Sal'Mevir, the black stone one is Mount Yavhlix, and the wooden one is probably the vault itself. There are 2 buttons on this map that I do not recognize, however. This map clearly marks Avsomic facilities, but I don't really know what either of these could be. This facility is related to the Blue Exodus division, so could they have something to do with Green Serpent or Red Dawn? It's not out of the question. Being in this place does also teach us what Blue Exodus's role was within the Empire. They built weapons, and gods damn did they build a lot of them. Subs, cars, tanks, planes. The rest of civilization is functioning off medieval-level technology and a prayer, and these people were ready to carpet bomb the Melmari at the drop of a hat. At least we know just how the Empire's arm got so long in the first place. This does naturally bring me back to the question of how they disappeared, but we'll focus on that a bit later. We have exploring to do. Perhaps the most insightful information in the vault pertains to Emperor Anir. Up to this point, we haven't spoken much of Avsom's 3 rulers. For the sake of our discussion, only 2 of them really matter: Anir and Dren. We've talked a little about Dren and the fact that he was the one who built and grew the Empire. Here in the vault, we learned that Anir had other ideas. Anir was a general before his ascendancy to the throne, and the ways in which he operates will come to reflect that. Dren and Anir were both focused on expanding the Empire, but Anir doesn't have nearly as much land left to conquer as Dren did in his time. We encounter more musings on the Exodus Vault's experimental weapon, the Mythbreaker. Reports indicate that this thing has no upper limit when it comes to energy capacity. This makes it hard to find somewhere to charge it, as doing so would probably completely drain the power of wherever you were attempting to do so. We can learn that the instructions for the Mythbreaker were received by something called the Resonant Eye, and kinda made Anir crazy. I think I'm starting to understand why they were so reluctant to make this thing. While they were worried about not having enough power in the network, they were working on a solution. Holotext mentions a secondary power source that might be capable of charging the weapon, which would be a fantastic discovery. Unfortunately, this discovery was being tracked by the Aphelion, a ship I have thus far been incapable of finding. Fantastic. After wandering deeper and deeper into the vault, I finally managed to find something that the logs refer to as the Graviton Crucible. This was the thing that was able to forge the Mythbreaker, and I have no doubt that it is here where I will find the missing fragment needed to reforge the weapon myself. Opening the door, I see just how much primal energy radiates from this place. The way it pools below me is unsettling. I shudder to think about what would happen if I fell down there. At last, I feel like we're finally making some progress. The second half of this all-powerful weapon is in my possession. We may need to charge it somehow, but at least I can now forge the damn thing. All that's left to do is get out of here. I find the fob for the tank in one of the hangars and do exactly what I was told not to do. Yeah, that was a justified warning. After a long and cinematic exit, I spot another tower atop this desert plateau. This place ends up being Sal'Mevir, the Empire's seat of power in the west. I wonder who it's named after. There's not much here I want to talk about, but boy am I glad I didn't go down there. Seeing how we now possess both halves of the Mythbreaker, I am all too excited to warp to Av'Sal to put this thing back together. For having spent 1,000 years collecting dust in the ruins of this place, everything functions surprisingly well. We managed to reforge the Mythbreaker with no issues, aside from the fact that in this form it is inert and needs to be charged. We've heard tell of a secondary source of primal energy that the Aphelion was looking into, but I have still yet to find anything of substance on the Avsomic flagship, and I've seen nothing that I could mistake for the Aphelion either. It's frustrating, but I haven't lost hope yet. We saw markers on the map in the Exodus Citadel that seem to indicate other Avsomic facilities around the world, so let's just see if we can't find one of them. I remember there being a gray marker near some mountains, and I have a vague idea of where that is. It's right above the floral paradise called Aklaroma. I only have a vague approximation of where I'm headed, so I guess we better start looking. After scanning the foothills of this mountain range, I spot a familiar sight near a small cave entrance. These quartz pillars serve as a distinct indicator of the Empire's presence, but it's weird because this just seems like a regular cave. Or rather, it did seem like a regular cave at first. The narrow passageway opens to reveal a massive sprawling cavern with one large building at the center of it. This place is the Rentite Cave, a place where the Empire mined Rentite, which was a material used to make catalysts or be inscribed with runes. We can explore this place and even obtain Rentite plate mail, but notably, I do not know how to use Rentite or really what it does. We can learn that the material necessary to carve into it could be found at a mine on the Isle of Dusk and Dawn. I've seen what I believe to be those islands on the Terminus map, and if I'm correct, they're quite a ways away. But if this is another Avsomic site, then it's worth visiting, so I make the extensive and exhausting trek all the way from Aklaroma clear up to the northwest corner of the map, and after nearly missing it, I stumble upon the Island of Dusk. I'll spare you all the theatrics. There's fuck all to be found at this mining site. We can obtain a set of crystal digging claws, but aside from that, there's nothing to be learned here. I feel my frustration building, but I decide to investigate the Island of Dawn first before I do anything else. Maybe there's something to be learned over there instead. The most noticeable feature on this island is the large castle that I will eventually learn is called Star-Rise Bastion. This is one of the few places we can encounter the Virmari, Virtuo's people. They are none too pleased here and incredibly eager to kill me. When their goddess abandoned them, the aspect Rhaveloth stepped in to take her place, and these people became followers of the Star-Rise Drake. Rhaveloth, too, has abandoned them. The Diary of a Virmari explains that Rhaveloth, as something of an oracle, left Drehmal for the Hidden Moon, citing coming times of great turmoil. Given that Rhaveloth became the patron of these people after Virtuo left, and Virtuo left at the end of the Third Era, it's entirely likely that whatever Rhaveloth foresaw has not yet come to pass. What could scare a deity so much that they choose to abandon their people? I've come to expect increasingly little from the aspects of this world. I'm not even sure this revelation surprises me anymore, but it does concern me. My concern is drowned out by my anger, however. I have traversed all over this world, and I keep running into dead end after dead end. The Mythbreaker was a dead end, the Cavern was a dead end, these islands were a dead end, Yavhlix was a dead end. I know I need to charge the Mythbreaker, a weapon that is likely strong enough to pierce the seal at that ominous mountain. I don't know how the hell to charge it. Everything centers around that goddamn ship. The Aphelion this, the Aphelion that. The Aphelion has been tracking the location of the secondary source. The Aphelion was the flagship of the Empire. I cannot find this thing. And I fear I've run out of options to explore. I fear for everything I have learned, I am no closer to figuring out how to get into that mountain. Maybe I'll live out the rest of my days in New Drehmal. Live out my days in the shadow of the Empire. It's a fitting enough end for an officer of Avsohm. Like Insohm before me, I have spent all of my time chasing a legacy. I have been on a fool's errand. All there is left to do is return to the Terminus and decide where I want to go from here. Avsis, unfortunately, has other plans in mind for me. I am being dispatched yet again to reset another terminal. I'm being asked to return to Av'Sal, to enter the administrative wing. At this point, I see little reason to follow through with this endeavor. I want nothing more than to be rid of all this. I'm tired of being taunted with a goal that sits just outside my reach. But my curiosity gets the better of me. And against my wishes, I return to Av'Sal. Finding this section of the building proves to be more annoying than I would have expected, but after descending into the lower sections, I do eventually stumble across it. Someone has built a little camp over what I assume is the door, and the nearby holotext instructs me that in order to gain entry, I have to stand in this scanner with no armor or weapons in order to let me pass the security clearance. These people may not have been able to build tech that let them survive, but damn do they build tech that lasts. With minimal resistance, I have made my way into the admin wing under Av'Sal. This place is filled with more unfortunate people who seem to have defied death in the worst way imaginable. I feel guilty in killing people who I might have known 1,000 years ago, but I know if I were them, I would much prefer death. A terminal in someone else's office references a being they refer to as Him Beyond, whose discovery has driven Anir to further madness. This same report mentions Red Dawn's work on something referred to only as Apotheosis, a machine to rival the aspects and deities themselves. Avsohm had a lot of technology, especially compared to everything around them, but how can they conceive of standing on par with the Divines? I don't doubt that Anir would attempt such a thing. I do doubt whether or not he would have succeeded. Another office contains a logbook that seems to chronicle a series of skirmishes and battles that the Empire had been having across the continent. These are not just battles with Malus and his forces, but are much more localized in origin, regional insurgency groups, likely fighting to obtain their independence from the Empire. This is the first real mention I've seen of resistance against them, and if this logbook is anything to go on, it was not a small amount of resistance either. The Empire had far-reaching tendrils. It stands to reason they'd end up pissing a lot of people off. For all the texts we've read thus far, I have still seen no mention of myself in any of the Empire's records. I wonder about my involvement in all this conquest and advancement. Near the back of the admin wing, we can find 2 more holotexts. One references Oryx, another name we saw in the list of Stasis subjects. Reportedly, he made contact with something beyond the Tear, the epicenter of power inside Yavhlix. We once again see the term nothing referenced. I want to know what they were speaking to. All of this feels intentionally vague. The other side of the room only serves to mock me further, claiming that the Aphelion has served its role as a research vessel and instead shall be fitted for combat as part of Anir's plans for Apotheosis. The lever in this room updates my security clearance within the Empire, presumably now reflecting my status as a B1 officer. No sooner does this happen than we receive a message from Commander Verpain, and what had previously been exasperation and defeat morphs into excitement and relief as I see the greatest words I could have possibly hoped for in this context. Presence requested aboard the Aphelion. After all this time searching, all the time spent restoring the Absys network and rebooting terminals, hoping that I would be able to piece together the whereabouts of the ship, only to turn up empty. Just when I thought I had failed, the answer drops into my lap, almost seemingly out of nowhere. I can do this. I can charge the Mythbreaker. I can really solve this mystery. Prepare to board and travel to the outer tower's wing of the terminus as soon as possible. You definitely don't have to tell me twice. The big door that sits in the outer wing of the terminus gives way to reveal a hidden area we previously had no way of accessing. The Aphelion has proven unresponsive, however, but thankfully we've been given access to board it. We're greeted with a small launch bay and this adorably tiny ship that I am all too eager to sit down in and prepare for takeoff. This is the closest I have been to real answers since waking up. The Aphelion is finally within my grasp. I've talked before about trying to break out of the confines of Minecraft. You're smart and definitely paying attention, so I trust you to remember that, but I think it's worth putting this moment in context as we talk about what is probably my favorite moment in the entire game. The door opens to a massive spacefaring craft looming just a short ways away from where we are now. I also think it bears mentioning that we are in fucking space! Our small ship then takes us over to the Aphelion in the most "this is technically Minecraft, I guess" moment of the entire game. Minecraft is obviously not built for such a thing, but the technology is there enough that we can build a facsimile of a flying ship to a pretty decent result. Hey, Create Aeronautics is out now, maybe someone can finally make a version of this that actually flies. There are a couple important things to unpack here. One is that no wonder we weren't going to find the Aphelion, it's a goddamn spaceship, and 2, Avsohm had a spaceship. 3, Avsohm had 2 spaceships because the Terminus is a low-orbit space station. We have been less than a mile away from the very ship we were hunting every time I wanted to teleport somewhere. Much like every other place we've visited, this ship is abandoned too. It also seems as though it's in some form of lockdown, as many of the doors and barriers are sealed. If I want to work my way through this place, I'm going to have to do a little bit of exploring. I work my way to the ship's bridge, where I see mention of something called the Veil and how it's stopping them from doing something. Instead, those aboard the Aphelion had turned their attention to the Divine Moon, which I remember from the Theogony books earlier is Lodar. At this point, I have decided to crown myself the highest ranking officer aboard this thing by virtue of not being some weird entropy zombie, so I just start mashing buttons on the bridge. This actually does something useful, mainly telling me that the ship is in synchronous orbit with the Divine Moon. That's gotta be where the source of primal energy is located. All I need to do is get down there and I can charge the thing. How hard can it be to get there? Also, Roomba. This isn't important, but I wrote down Roomba in my notes, so there you go. Roomba. Eventually I find hollow door controls that give me access to the ship's ventilation system. This rummaging eventually grants me entry to the Emperor's throne room, sadly with no Emperor. We can see examples of Anir trying to one-up his predecessor here. He wants to be seen as the Empire's greatest leader. I mean, the historian literally calls him God Emperor Anir. To say this man might have been batshit crazy is starting to seem like an understatement. The problem is, he was a batshit crazy leader with the most advanced technology possible and more resources than can even be fathomed. This Apotheosis idea is widely dangerous if you ask me, but I doubt our fair Emperor can even see the forest for the trees anymore, and clearly has nobody telling him no. Through a window, I finally get a clear view of the world we inhabit. It's a magnificent view that expresses just how isolated we are now. Everything I've known rests down there. Even the continent of Drehmal is fairly isolated, all things considered. There are vast swaths of ocean separating the continent from the nearest body of land. It's just us down there. Anir's room highlights his concern about the fact that the realm is slowly headed towards destruction, and that he's looking for a solution. I think he may want to start looking a little faster, but what do I know? More ventilation exploration brings me out near the security room, blocked by yet another hollow door. Unfortunately, I don't see a way to disable this door, so we're just going to have to try and find vent access another way. I do also manage to find a demonstration of the fact that primal energy can pierce Veilstone. It's nice to know that once I charge the Mythbreaker, it should actually work. I think finding out it didn't might be the crash out to end all crash outs from me. More important than that, though, is finding a compass that gives us a reading on the incredibly high concentration of primal energy on Lodar. This means that I won't have to aimlessly wander the place until I find it, which I am thankful for. Still more, sneaking through vents like a goblin brings me face to face with the unfortunate fate of Commander Verpain. I wonder how long that signal was being transmitted before I came across it. I'm sorry, Commander. I'll do my best to honor you. The security room has feeds not from the Aphelion, but all the facilities we visited back on Drehmal. Sal'Mevir's feed has been lost entirely, but we can see Av'Sal, the Rentite Cave, somewhere I don't recognize called the Foundry, and the Exodus Vault. Tucked away in the corner, however, is a feed for Mount Yavhlix. This is our first chance to actually see what the inside of the mountain looks like, and it's not good. This feed is more distorted than the others, the view completely distorted by these weird holes. The holotext describes someone named Devel disappearing after holes began to appear all over his body until nothing was left. Holes like the ones we see on the feed, no doubt. I am more worried now than ever before about what it is we might stand to unleash by opening that door. But surely whatever history lies within deserves not to be forgotten, if only for the sake of not repeating it, so I press on. I end up ejecting primal slag into the atmosphere of Lodar in order to gain access to the pipe that contained it. It said that this stuff is lightweight and durable, so I wonder if there's anything I can do with it. I then spend the next few minutes traversing the outside of the Aphelion, getting to take in the beautiful skybox that makes up the celestial bodies surrounding this. We can even watch as another moon circles the realm, and looking below shows us Lodar in all its glory. We make our way through a massive hole that is opened in the side of the ship. Inside, we see another terminus tower, except this one is waiting to be deployed. If we drop this tower onto the Divine Moon, then it should be our ticket onto it without jumping into space and dying due to lack of oxygen. I think I'll take my chances with this plan instead. I've spoken about some beautiful places, but Lodar probably takes the cake. This place is definitely the most esoteric and out there location we'll visit. Many of the aspects have their own realms here on Lodar, and they're incredibly unique and interesting looking. We are definitely not on Drehmal anymore. This place is another example of somewhere that is sprawling with a lot to do, but for the sake of our narrative, I'll be skipping over a good portion of it, so I encourage you to come back and check it out for yourself. The debris that we ejected from the Aphelion makes its reappearance as we watch a meteor fall from the sky. I'm not going to spend too much time talking about this. It's ancient debris. This is how we get netherite gear, though in the game it's called celestial armor. My quest to follow the compass to wherever it leads is immediately derailed by this massive gateway that I immediately decide to follow instead. This incredibly ornate bridge leads to what is probably the single most impressive build in the entire map. The Divine Seat of Power, Ytaj. And yes, achievement description, I do feel small indeed. There's a lot to look at here, but one thought supersedes all this. We may actually be able to find Lord Malus here, as he left for Ytaj sometime around the start of the 4th era. This place has altars for many of the aspects, so it stands to reason that somewhere in this palace we can find the room of a burnt god. Behind the throne room I spot some large machine that I can't exactly discern the purpose of, but I get the sense that it demands one of my weapons. I spot a couple Greek letters on the side, the same letters that have appeared on specific items we've spotted very rarely across this world. The machine responds in kind, and a massive eye opens, enhancing Oblivion with new powers. The 2 items I have give the weapon a decrease in cooldown time for Force of Nothing and granting increased health while I'm holding it. From there, I decide to begin ascending the Tower of Drehmal, when I am suddenly beset by the voice of a slumbering serpent. As we ascend the tower, Drehmal speaks to us. We've heard tales of Drehmal's words through the parables in Drehua Temple, but here we get to speak to them directly. I wonder how long it's been since anyone heard from them. They speak about change, about silence. Drehmal grew tired of silence, and as such sought a change, sought to create something. In creating something, in eradicating the silence, you invite things that you have no control over into the equation. As Drehmal puts it, noise brings entropy, chaos. Drehmal remarks on the fact that chaos may be an unfortunate byproduct of creating and giving people their own free will, but it's a necessary risk. though some may suffer as a result of this, explicitly referring to Malus as a victim of entropy, there is no joy without pain. Though the felling of the primal tree was a cataclysmic event, this event does give way to the world as we know it now. It gives way to Drehmal, Virtuo, and Malus. It's because of this that we exist, that the Empire ever existed. I am then struck by a meteor standing atop Ytaj, thus absolutely killing me and the momentum of the moment. Drehmal describes themselves as an inheritor of the version of them who came before the collapse. They say they took a lot more from the one who came before them than their contemporaries. I'm curious just how alike the two are. They ponder how things might be different. Drehmal wishes to dream of their awakening, to feel the sun once more, to encounter the Dromari once again, and live out the remainder of their life. For as much as we've learned about Drehmal, they have never seemed to want for anything. Malus spent much of his history demanding conquest, and Virtuo spent much of her life in search of perfection. But Drehmal rebuilt the world not out of any desire to rule it, but simply because they were the one destined to do it. We will talk more about this conversation later, but suffice it to say, it's very important. Descending the tower once more, I spot a room that has a nether brick archway and a red carpet, the signature style of one angry red god, and sure enough, sitting on a throne in the center of the room is Malus himself. Malus is here, and we can have an honest-to-God conversation with him. Unlike what just happened with Drehmal, we can actually ask him a number of questions. I first seek to get a better understanding of him, so I ask why he's here. Why abandon his palace and his people? What exactly caused this major shift in his ideology? He gives a pretty cagey answer, getting defensive and stating he decided to retire to the halls of his forebears. The aspects are all cut from the same cloth, so in that sense he considers them his family. We can press him further on this issue and ask about the burnt palace. His journal entry makes it pretty clear he has no intention of returning, unless it's to tear the whole thing down. This kinda just serves to piss him off as he gets upset at us for interrogating him, but pressing the issue further will ultimately force him to answer the question of what discoveries caused him to change his mind. He claims to have traveled to somewhere far away, as he puts it, beyond our vision and our time. I'm not super clear what he's referring to, but he won't elaborate any further. Malus then asks us why we have come to Ytaj. I tell him that I'm trying to uncover the fate of Avsohm, and Mal remarks that he witnessed it firsthand. He was so focused on defeating the Empire that he didn't stop to think about how they could have possibly ended the way they did. Conquest did not bring him the satisfaction he craved, which led him to ask why the Empire disappeared the way they did. The fact that something out there saw fit and had the capability to eradicate our people in a single day is one of the few things that Mal fears, chooses not to think about. He reveals that we are the only remnant left of the Empire. The question of most significance to me, though, is about Virtuo. Their relationship is difficult, to say the least, and Malus proves this by immediately getting defensive when asked about her. He explains some of what we already knew and expresses regret at their last confrontation. Mal explains that he was jealous of his sister, jealous of all the ways people worshipped her. Her people adored her in a way that Malus could not obtain, and so he took it out on her. Only, it didn't help. Mal has decided to stay here in the hopes that he can get himself under control. An admirable goal at the very least. On the other side of this tower lies Virtuo's room. I'm not surprised to find that she isn't here, but that's not to say we can't learn something about her while we're here. Her journal tells us she returned to Ytaj to meet with the Aspects. Her meeting with them was less than ideal. She expressed her frustrations at violence, selfishness, and discrimination that she saw plaguing the world. The Council declined to do anything to intervene. Virtuo is then informed about people residing on the far edges of the realm to the east, the place where Virtuo was born. We learn that this is what Zyvernt is. It's the name of the land that resides to the far east and west of the realm. Virtuo takes her parish and sets out for East Zyvernt, presumably to try and help the people there. I want to talk more about Virtuo at the end of this summary, but for now we still have a lot of ground to cover, so let's get back to following the compass to the energy source. Along the way, I do stumble upon a town filled with Termari, confirming they originate from Lodar. I spend a little time here improving my gear by trading with the blacksmith, but this is really just a pit stop on my way to the compass's location, which ends up being this small hidden station in this hellish-looking biome. The holotexts appear not to function, but I spot the same scanner we saw under Av'Sal, which means it's time to strip down again. I feel as though I am so close to charging this thing, except we've run into a problem. I have no idea what to do down here. Everything seems to be turned off, and when I try to walk through what looks like a portal, I find that it doesn't do anything. I head back upstairs to find a distorted map and a singular holotext that explains the purpose of the other 3 locations we see on this map. I don't know exactly what this has to do with the facility, but ring structures sounds a lot like the portal-looking thing in the basement, so we'll just have to visit all these places to see what we can learn. This begins my extensive trek across the Divine Moon. The first stop in my journey is to Rhahelma's domain. I managed to spot what I assume to be the port nestled in a set of floating islands. Getting up there does prove a bit difficult, but after only dying a couple of times, I do eventually make my way onto a catwalk. Inside this place we learn about the transmission of energy from the Aphelion, and the way that it normally happens automatically. Evidently, an orbital shift has occurred over the last 1,000 years, which means that we have to realign the station by hitting this button when the Aphelion is directly above this place. So, I guess we're sitting around until the orbit aligns and oh shit, press the button quickly, do it now, hurry, hold! With this completed, we at least know how the energy transmission works between the Aphelion and the facilities here on Lodar. There's not much else here for us to discover. There's more clarification about the whereabouts of the remaining 2 facilities, one of which sits in Kai's domain. I'm a pretty big follower of Kai. I mean, I've been carrying around his relics, so maybe we'll get some special treatment while I'm there. Guys, I think Kai might know something about the weird ring we found in the basement of the core facility, as I have now discovered it's called. Kai's domain, and subsequently the warp ring facility, are full of these things. I still don't know how they work, so I guess the only way in is through this massive hole at the bottom of the facility. I first learned that this place I'm trying to enter is known as the Numencore, which, while not helpful, is nice to know. A ring experiment inside the building also explains that the sides of the rings glow blue when they're active. I try stepping through this ring since I assume it must be working, but I still don't teleport. I guess there must be something else I'm missing, so I keep looking. I find it odd that the aspects continue to let these places exist and rot away on their divine doorstep. On Drehmal I can understand somewhat, as people are looting these places for items, and in the process doing anything with the ruins is probably more trouble than it's worth. But these are divine beings. Surely they could muster up a little more effort than the mortals. Do they just not care? I suppose it's possible. Virtuo's journal explained that the aspects did not appear in person for her meeting. Eventually I find out that someone has uncovered the solution to this ring problem. They can't be looked at. I curse Kai for creating something so asinine, but at least I know how to use them now. As following this instruction, I'm taken to some underground room I would have no other way of accessing. We can learn that Avsohm was capable of setting up these rings remotely, and this was likely how they made their way into the Numencore. I'm exasperated by this puzzle, but I am at least one step closer to charging the Mythbreaker and completing my true goal. Lo's domain is the last stop on our Lodar Grand Tour. The aspect of cold may have created a pretty inhospitable domain, but these auroras look cool as shit. Tucked away in a cave towards the very back of this place sits a large cube chained to the icy ceiling above. There's no easy way inside, so I guess it's time to bust out the old tried and true Minecraft technique, nerd poling our way up. I thank God that even though this place is nestled squarely in the domain of the aspect of cold, we do not ever have to do any ice platforming. I'm not great at parkour, and between speed boosts throwing off my muscle memory and ice being ice, I'm just glad I don't have to deal with it. Near the top I can spot a similar machine to the one I found in the core facility's basement, with the little end rods and the glowing platform. Nearby text tells me that every so often the diamond lensing source has to be replaced, which requires a diamond block in order to do so. Thankfully I have no shortage of diamonds, so I can make quick work of this task. Placing the block causes the machine to hum back to life, which in and of itself is pretty inconsequential for us, but more importantly means that we've obtained the last piece of the puzzle. Everything is finally within my grasp now. I should be able to enter the Numencore. I should be able to charge the weapon. As long as everything goes well in the core, the only thing left to do is journey to the mountain and finally get some answers. I really hope I didn't jinx myself. Back in the facility, we can finally put it all together. Place the diamond, wait for the alignment, moonwalk through the ring. We come face to face with, well, a black wall, but if we turn around, we can take in the awe that is the Numencore. This is the first time I've seen pure primal energy, unrelenting and uncontrollable. This source of magic really is enormous. I can't fathom that we won't be able to charge the Mythbreaker here. Looking around, I wonder why on earth Kyve would let the Empire construct such a thing here, but I slowly start to realize that he probably didn't. I can't access the core directly as a hollow door is blocking my path, so the first goal is figuring out how to turn it off. We can wander around for a while and spot a security room monitoring the other stations on the moon, text denoting the locations of all the fragments, and living quarters for the people stationed here. The holotext confirms what I fear. The Empire before me were similarly worried about Kyve's wrath should they attempt to tap into the Numencore directly, believing he would wipe out their work here should they attempt to do so. Of course, the intention of this place was to charge the weapon, so some people wish to disregard this fear and do it anyways. To the far right of the core, I spot the first of 2 release levers for the hollow door. One down, one to go. In the sleeping quarters, I find a book that discusses Oryx and the thing known as the Resonant Eye again. Oryx is described as a competent and vital part of the Empire's earlier days, as Oryx served underneath all 3 emperors. It wasn't until he began his work at the mountain that he began to descend into insanity. Whatever he saw during his time using the Eye, which the book refers to as dives, seems to have changed him. Oryx had become squarely focused on this thing, which I guess we'll just add to the list of things we're looking for once we enter the mountain. I find the second switch on the far left side of the place. Who would have guessed? The energy begins to overwhelm the facility as Av'Sal instructs us to evacuate. But to hell with that. I came here to charge the Mythbreaker. I'm not leaving without doing it. The force of the Numencore tries to slow me down as I get closer and closer to the pedestal, but I do manage to slot the weapon in and begin charging. This almost seems like it begins to overload the system as Av'Sal struggles to quantify the energy level of the charging sequence. Just when I start to worry that this thing is going to fail in cataclysmic fashion, it's completed. The charged Mythbreaker sits before me, waiting to be used. As I begin to leave, I feel an arcane presence wash over the room as the very thing I had been dreading becomes reality. Kyve is absolutely livid that we have broken into the Numencore to charge this weapon on behalf of the Empire, and he's prepared to do something about it. I had hoped my devotion to Kyve might buy me some form of favor in the event that this turned hostile, but it seems like it makes no difference at this point. I am no longer a follower of Kyve in his eyes. I am the heir to Avsohm. And Avsohm should stay dead. While Kyve is yelling at me, I spot a second problem. The Mythbreaker is leaking energy. All this talk of Avsohm's perfect weapon, discussion of its seemingly limitless strength, and as soon as I leave the core, it begins to deteriorate. Not only are we being attacked by the aspect of magic, but if I don't make it back to the mountain fast enough, I won't be able to open the door even if I can get there. Thus begins the race against both Kyve and the decay of the Mythbreaker. This is, of course, no easy feat. Kyve is attempting to smite us down while simultaneously summoning enemies to assist him in atomizing us. There is one thing he shouts that catches my attention. The vessel you carry is false, derived from a power you cannot fathom. The very same power slaughtered your people. It's clear that he's right about the Mythbreaker. I can't imagine that this is what it's supposed to work like, but the question remains of where they learned about it from. How did it result in the demise of the Empire? I suppose we'll have all the time in the world to ponder this as I make my way to Yavhlix. Kyve resigns himself to defeat as I charge the weapon to destroy the Veilstone Seal. I have won. Kyve gives us one final warning before he departs, and the door now lays open. I have made it inside Mount Yavhlix. Given what the rest of the Empire looks like, to say I wasn't ready for Yavhlix would be accurate. This place looks less like the core facility powering all their technology, and more like a creepy haunted mansion built in a dark cave. The brief glimpse of this place we caught on the feed in the Aphelion was an accurate omen of this place. It's decaying, but not in the way you might think. Exactly as described by the log in the security room, this place is covered in holes. The first holotext we can spot demonstrates this well, and it's only going to get worse from there. Scattered around the place, we can spot lost Avsomic soldiers, among a number of other horrors like this legitimately terrifying beast. I struggle to think of a worse fate to befall anyone. A lever can be spotted on a wall immediately opposite the very first door. Apparently it's an override switch, but I don't know what it's in service of. The collection facility is no easy place to navigate. Aside from being constructed like a maze, the enemies that lie within are no joke either. The soldiers have guns, so one wrong move stands to have me executed at point blank range. Insanity lingers in this place. These people were trapped in here, trapped with these things. It's no wonder they ended up the way they did. A number of the texts are unsettling to read. One book mentions of a dead god who wants freedom from nothing. Capital N, again. A barely legible holotext talks about Emperor Aenir and something known as the God Machine. What the hell was Red Dawn working on? Atop the castle, I can spot yet another terminus tower, except this one doesn't appear to work, citing extra-dimensional interference. That's a new one. The following room is an enormous space that houses what I can only presume to be the Tear. The energy that radiates from this place is intense, rivaling that of the Numencore itself. At the very center is an empty shell that seems as though it is the foundation for a portal. It's obviously the end portal, but work with me here. Within various chests around the mountain, I have come across Oculus of Nothing that seems to slot in nicely. Creating a few of my own with the primal pearls I've been carrying around causes the portal to spring back to life. At this point, there's no turning back. We've come this far. It's time to see what this extra-dimensional interference is, and whether or not I can put a stop to it. I see his name before I get the chance to spot him. The aspect that went missing and was presumed dead. The god who sought to sow discord and panic in order to seize power and control. The 8 eyes attacking people, leaving no memories of what happened. The dead god seeking to be free of nothing. The ever-fear is no longer cooperating. Tethlane, now lost to nothing, is here. And he's barely intelligible. Tethlane has resided here for a long, long time, presumably since he went missing. I still don't know how he ended up here, but right now I need to focus more on not dying at his hands? Claws? Whatever, you get the gist. He recognizes us as a remnant of the Empire, as so many aspects have done before. Tethlane speaks about making his last stand here, but I don't know what he's talking about. He's attempting to kill us for entering this place, and as such, I seek to defend myself in turn. This is obviously the Ender Dragon fight, but it's not just the Ender Dragon fight. Tethlane has a couple new mechanics to unleash on us, such as summoning new enemies to litter the central platform, as well as firing projectiles down on us aside from the traditional Dragon's Breath. As he gets weaker, he also summons more dangerous enemies. The layout of this place also makes it difficult to navigate, which helps to increase the difficulty. Eventually, though, we defeat Tethlane, freeing him from this primal prison, except he's not relieved. He seems confused. His final words claim that in doing what I did, something will swallow us whole. Obligatory, gotta claim the egg, regular Minecraft credits, yada yada, none of this matters. What do you think I'm here to do, play regular Minecraft? Exiting the portal causes a new voice to reach out to us, remarking that with Tethlane dead, the seal at Yavhlix is now broken. I begin to wonder if we have caused the supposed calamity that Rhaveloth foretold, as this voice informs us that a ring of swords now encloses the realm. Yet this voice does express some remorse. It may feel a little aloof, but there still appears to be some sincerity in these words. I suppose I don't know what the point in lying to us would be. We just met. In what is probably the most common phrase I utter during this entire analysis, we return once again to the terminus at the behest of this voice. Entering brings us a whole new set of problems. Avsys immediately begins to malfunction, culminating in a full-on reboot of the entire terminus. When it does turn back on, it's not the same anymore. Whatever has been speaking to us appears to have overridden the system altogether, judging by a color shift in the text. Nevertheless, the system comes back to life and dispenses for us, I have no idea what this is. It doesn't come with a set of coordinates to head to like the compasses did, but it does come with a clue. Travel east of the Painted City, a fallen fragment from the home of the deities. Fortunately, I do know where the Painted City is. The City of Dusks can be found in the floral region of Aklaroma, where I've already been, so all we have to do is wander east until we find something that looks like the Divine Moon. You know, looking back, I have no idea how I never found this place. The lunar surface and weird decorations give it away immediately that I'm in the right place. And sure, this place looks cool, but there's not a lot here. I don't know what it is about this one building that's all that interesting. I am getting a little ahead of myself though, so let's back up for a second. We exit the terminus to continue our conversation with this mysterious voice. It explains that there is more still we have yet to learn, and in order to do that, we're gonna have to earn it. I'm also assured that something tangible lies at the end of this little scavenger hunt, just in case I needed further incentive to follow the trail. Anyways, this brings us back to the building on the sunken moon. It explains that the Empire's use and discovery of Veilstone was actually rather clever. The Empire was able to harvest and manipulate it for a number of different purposes, including sealing the mountain away for everyone's safety. The voice then demonstrates that it means little in the way of our journey now as he blasts a massive hole in the Veilstone wall that seemingly separated us from whatever the place below is. As I descend into this place, I remember that map we saw back in the Exodus Citadel. How there was one location we never visited, and I'm pretty sure it was located in the same area we're in now. Unfortunately, this doesn't tell me anything about what lies below, but the disembodied voice assures me that it will be by my side until the end. I have to admit, this does put me at ease somewhat. As unsettling as this place is, it's nice to know that I'm not technically alone here. It helps that this is the same being that just blasted a hole through the Veilstone floor. The voice then begins to tell the story of the Empire's leaders, speaking about how the sovereigns were heavily focused on the penalties for killing a sitting emperor. Each emperor progressively increased the punishment for attempted assassination, culminating in Anir placing those who tried into temporal stasis, stuck, unable to move for the rest of time. Death was a common fear among all three of them, and the attempts to dissuade would-be assassins only grows more severe. The mere fact that we know these punishments were employed reveals that this never truly worked, or it didn't stop the practice entirely. After this, a floating elevator reveals to us exactly where we're being led to. Red Dawn's facility. I suppose it's time to find out what the makers of Apotheosis were up to. This facility is far and away the most miserable place we've been to up to this point. I think it's safe to say that we've come to learn the Empire were not good people, but Red Dawn teaches us that they were so much worse than we thought. Terrible human experiments are commonplace here, using stasis prisoners to test infusions to no avail. And it's here, in a chest in Red Dawn, where I encounter us for the first time. Project Moonstrider, overseen by Dr. Voski Otis. The project itself is probably on the tamer side for Red Dawn. I had been working on anti-aging technology when a subject died during the trials. This culminates in my resignation from Red Dawn altogether, requesting to be transferred elsewhere. I take solace in the fact that I was seemingly a reluctant participant in all this, but the fact that I ever ended up in this place still leaves me with a foul taste. I want to burn this place down. I want it all gone. But if it survived this long, I doubt I can change that now. We also find a more detailed description of the Empire's plans when it comes to the Mythbreaker. They clearly recognize the problems that would stem from trying to charge the Mythbreaker at the Numencore, so they instead intended to ascend Emperor Anir to godhood, all the while using the war against Malus to encourage support for militarization and weapons research. That is, until the Emperor ascends and they no longer have a use for him. I'm still not entirely clear what this is in service of, but the Emperor's drive for power had hit an all-time high. Wanting to kill Kaiv because he disapproved of our use of the Numencore to charge the Mythbreaker, a crime I have unfortunately committed on behalf of Avsohm. He also wishes to eradicate Mael purely because he's no longer useful. I shudder to think what would have happened if the Emperor had gotten anywhere close to achieving his goals, though I realize now I don't know why he didn't. Coming to the end of a hallway, I encounter a large door in the floor that gives way to a massive drop. What I find down here is equal parts impressive and horrifying. This is Red Dawn's magnum opus. This is the apex of divinity. This is the God Machine. Anir's rite of ascension designed to allow him to surpass the aspects, surpass everything. Even here, we still see signs of jealousy of the Emperor. Requests to pull records of Emperor Dren from the archives in an attempt to appear better than his predecessor. Even on the crest of divinity, his focus is on Dren's legacy. For all the praise and lofty ambitions of this God Machine, we only need to look to its summit to see the legacy it leaves behind. On the throne of this machine lies Emperor Anir. For all his ambitions, he still befell the same fate as everyone else in the Empire. The voice returns to explain that the sword was drawn, but it did not butcher the body, it merely severed a limb. The voice has a proclivity for speaking in metaphors, but I assume that this machine did work, at least to a degree. If that's the case, then why is Anir dead on its throne? I don't wish to languish here any longer, and besides, the voice is encouraging us to leave this place anyways. We have yet another place to visit, and god damn it, I just left there. Alright, fine, back to Mount Yavhlix. The voice commends us for our resolve as we step deep into the heart of the mountain. As we descend, the voice presents us with a hypothetical about 3 people stranded on an island. One who gathers resources while trying to use as few as possible, one who consumes the island's resources to their heart's content, and a third who I accidentally get cut off because I reach the entrance, but I'll just view the transcript and explain it to you. The third attempts to build a raft and sail away, only to perish in the journey. This, to me, feels like a pretty obvious parallel to our 3 deceased emperors. The voice once again blasts a hole in the Veilstone for us, granting entry into the resonant halls. In addition to being a creepy maze, this place has another fun feature. It's full of these little hole monsters, which are unrelenting and unkillable. Your only path to survival is just to stay away from them. Scattered throughout this place, we can find records of Oryx's dives using the Resonant Eye. The first of which appears to be an introduction with Tethlane, likely their first direct communication. We can find another log in which Tethlane explains how he ended up in this place to begin with. Tethlane's sister, Noha, informed him of an anomaly at Mount Yavhlix, the Tear. He decided to seal the Tear, but was unable to do so from within our realm, so he ventured to the other side to seal it from there. The Tethlane we see in these logs is a far cry from the one we eventually killed all those years later. The toll that this other realm took on him was clearly substantial. Becoming isolated again for all that time probably didn't help either. The Everfear will explain later that he believes the Tear will be the death of the realm, and it's definitely sounding like he's right. Though it's doubtful he would have been able to hold on forever, we have likely accidentally accelerated the realm's demise, though in truth, I don't know by how much. Tethlane holds out hope that eventually a solution will be devised, but he remains doubtful, explaining that Kaiv will likely not intervene as long as Tethlane is in place to keep the Tear in check. The game becomes Subnautica for a few minutes before we finally make our way to the Resonant Eye. This place chronicles a number of dives both before and after the discovery of Tethlane. One of particular note is Dive 03, which overloads the system due to trillions of signals being too much for the eye to bear. Dive 4 revealing that the largest energy signal appears to be distorting time. They also received 2 images as a vision. One is a spear, and the other appears to be a royal court of sorts. The spear, obviously, is the Mythbreaker. Avsohm discovered its existence through the eye, and attempted to forge a copy based on what they received. To condense down what we learn here, because otherwise each of these is going to begin with me talking about a dive, the trillions of signals are other worlds out there beyond our reach. Anir wanted to sail to them in the Aphelion, but they ran into a problem: the Veil. Fortunately, the Eye had already provided them with the solution to this conundrum, the Mythbreaker. Anir's plan was to charge the Mythbreaker and use it to pierce the Veil, allowing the Aphelion to sail between worlds and conquer them all in the name of the Empire. Of course, Kaiv would never allow such a thing to happen, so the God Machine was constructed to raise Anir to divinity, allowing him to go toe-to-toe with Kaiv, if not beyond him. Once they had control of the Numencore, they could do whatever they wanted. This is a very ambitious plan, and with the power of hindsight, we know it would not have worked. The critical flaw in all this, aside from the fact that Anir lay dead on the throne of his machine, is that the Mythbreaker was flawed. It was incomplete. It leaked energy from the moment we left the Numencore, and upon being fired the first time, it disintegrated into nothing. I have a weird relationship with the Empire. I recognize that we're a part of it, but at present I have no memories of my time among their ranks. There is still something demoralizing in knowing that everything my people were working towards was largely all for naught, even if they hadn't been wiped out in a day. The voice brings us out of the halls, continuing with his story from Red Dawn. The sword was drawn, the hand sensing peril, and so it took a life. Is the voice implying that he is the hand? What was his role in ending the Empire? We don't have time to dwell on this, as the voice instructs us that we should prepare for one final journey, claiming the destination is further than we could conceive of. He invites us to his court and asks us to return to the terminus, saying the journey will be over soon. We have finally entered the beginning of the end. I'll spare you my preparation because it's boring as shit, but Avsis gives us one final item with a clue to follow. Return to the place where you had risen lest you wish not to be chosen. It feels weird to return to Stasis at this point. The last time I was here I barely knew anything. Now I wield the same weapon the figure bore in the security feed. Before I do that though, I decide to take one last look around the Primal Caverns. I hope that Drehmal can achieve their dream of waking up once again. The voice assures us that our questions will be answered, and begins to speak about who he himself is. This being seems to be very exceptionally powerful, something we've kind of already seen. He describes himself as the center of creation, but he gives himself many titles. Only one of them truly matters though. He tears a hole in the center of the stasis pod chamber, inviting us to step through, and formally introducing himself as the Mythoclast, a being so powerful that his name causes us to lose our focus upon hearing it. The fresco on the wall bears what the Mythoclast refers to as a self-portrait, claiming his true form is hard to represent. We are then given our prize for making it this far on our journey. Mythoclast grants us the Mythbreaker, in all its perfect and completed glory. The thing Avsohm sought to forge for so long, the same ghost we spent so long chasing, and the very thing they ultimately failed to make. It's just been handed to me. The Mythoclast then tells us that this is our final journey. From here there's no turning back. The world may be different upon our return. Time doesn't work the same. I suppose I've done all I can set out to do in this world. All that's left for me now is to follow the Mythoclast to his court to finish whatever it is I've started. The Court of Nothing is a strange place. Mytho describes it as the place where totality converges to be born again. I'm then told that I am to meet two guests, ones I should be familiar with. Indeed I should, as the pair that I end up being greeted by are none other than the missing leaders of the fallen Insomic Order. The man whose castle disappeared one day, and the man who lost himself chasing ghosts all the way to his demise. Hovidshir and Ultha stand in opposition to me, and I have no choice but to face off against the pair if I am to proceed. This fight is very hard. There's nothing else to say about it, and I fear that talking more about it I will burst a blood vessel, so let's just move on. It's strange to hear the Mythoclast talk about the pair after the fact. I had assumed this was an act of malice, but he speaks about the pair like he brought them here to help them. We're still not done yet, as we're told that one final guest remains as we step through yet another portal. We emerge from the portal and into a place that looks remarkably like the spawn room from the beginning of the game. As we step outside, we are treated to my favorite place in the entire map. This is the Heart of the Void. At its center sits the throne of the Mythoclast. As we traverse this broken landscape, I start to come across strange entities. The first is this weird purple zombie, but we'll encounter more of them as we go along. As I move from platform to platform, we can see the remnants of various places from around the world, but it's not just limited to the realm either, as off in the distance I can spot Kyve's divine rings. The Mythoclast continues his story as we work our way to the throne. He explains that Avsohm was slaughtered because they could not comprehend what they were up against. They reached for his crown. He claims that his crown cannot fall into the hands of the corrupt, that no one is ever going to be fit to replace him. Only the Mythoclast can carry out his duties. Only he knows what must be done. This obviously confirms that the Mythoclast wiped out our entire empire, predominantly for attempting to use the God Machine. I imagine that it was also in part for our other plans of conquest, but it's clear which thing Mythoclast found most threatening. I don't think I can express just how spectacular I find this place, but I mean, you can see it. We continue our conversation with a discussion of Emperor Dren. He tells us about the Emperor's ambitions, something that we've seen many times over, even if his reach didn't extend as far as the late Aenirs. But even Dren was not without his own flaws. His plans for the Empire would ultimately lay the foundation that Aenir would build upon during his reign. The greed and conquest that defined our final Emperor may have been notable during his tenure, but they didn't start there. Dren may have been trying to do what he thought was best, but your intentions can only do so much, especially when you're no longer there to champion them. Eventually I make my way to a recognizable sight. The Dome of Av'Sal, now in an even more sorry state than it was when we found it. The facade of the Empire has faded away. The allure is gone. There is no fantastical technology or awe-inspiring history, only a crumbling facade, a vacant shell, and me, I suppose. Mytho decides to tease the identity of his final guest, someone who made a personal request for this exact event. He is unclear exactly what is to be gained from this meeting, but he suspects that he may wish to finish what he started, or simply meet us face to face. I begin to suspect I might know who awaits us atop the throne. From here we prepare for the final battle, the culmination of everything I have sought to obtain and understand. We are so close to the end. I just need to prepare for the worst and hope for the best. Slowly I ascend to the final platform and await my visitor. First I see a leg, then another, then an arm. Slowly a form shapes itself from the infinite void until I am standing face to face with something that bears the form of a Drehmal. Oblivion manifests in his hand as I come to the realization that we are looking at a familiar sight. The very figure I saw way back in the facility is none other than the emissary of the void. here to face off against us at the beginning and end of all things. Unlike most boss fights we've encountered, this one operates on almost no axis we're familiar with. This is not a reskin of the Ender Dragon, not an existing mob. None of these mechanics exist within the confines of Minecraft. This boss is an entity unto himself, and we have no choice but to adapt or die. Unfortunately, his scythe does a bunch of shit that mine doesn't do, so I think the Mythoclast might be playing favorites. This fight is hard, but not in the same way that Hovidshir and Oldva were. At least I feel like we're on equal footing, and not doing some 2-on-1 bullshit. Utilizing Malevolentia to defend myself and Oblivion to keep me out of danger, this fight really feels like a test of skill. Eventually, I managed to best the Emissary, which unfortunately does not mark his defeat. Instead, he removes his hood and stands back up to face off in round 2. This reveals my opponent to not just be some random Drehmal, as I'm sure you're shocked to find out, but is instead Emperor Drehmal, first of the Empire. This fight gets much harder from here. Emperor Dren attempts to form a massive ring to limit the scope of the fight. I try and exit the ring to avoid this trap, only to find that Dren can wield the force of nothing in the same way I can, and drags me back into the ring against my will. At this point, I'm trying to do anything I can to stay alive in this fight, lest I meet the same fate as the rest of the Empire. The legacy of Avsohm culminates in us, the first and last of the Empire, and I refuse to be bested by Dren. The Emperor's had a long time to train here and be favored by the Mythoclast, but it ultimately means nothing as we deliver the final blow, causing his life to be claimed by the very scythe he wields. I watch as his soul returns to the Beyond. The Empire now stands as a monolith. I am now alone at the end of all things. The Mythoclast assures me that I gave him the send-off he wished for. Dren wished to see the end of the Empire when he appeared before the Mythoclast, and now he has. We have finally given him the death that he wanted. With Dren's closure achieved, our work here has been completed. The Mythoclast opens a new portal to send us back home. He explains that the Ring of Swords has struck. There is nothing left for us to return to. I still wish to look upon the world one last time, even if everything has changed beyond my reckoning. I take one last look at the center of all things before I head through one final portal. It doesn't look like anything has changed upon my immediate return. Exiting back into the Stasis facility proves me immediately wrong. This whole place is full of sand. Everything has long since eroded. Well, almost everything. The statue of Drehmal remains standing, though its inscription has faded slightly. There's nothing more for me here, so I swiftly make my exit. I now realize that we've been here before. When we threw that pearl into the temporal engine, it brought us here. We've already seen the end of all things, and I didn't even realize it. The three mountains look faded and worn. The color appears unchanged, and yet I can't help but think that everything is more gray now. Lanterns guide me back through the primal caverns, except now there's a new opening on the other side of the cavern. Heading out the other way finally allows us to meet the Divine Serpent for the first time. Drehmal is dead. Their skeleton is all we have left now. I wish we had been given the chance to meet them in earnest, but we've missed them by an indeterminate amount of time. Thank you for playing Drehmal. I sit here in silence as the credits roll, staring in awe of the corpse of the last Divine. I want to talk for a minute about this game before we continue our conversation, and finally talk about what I think it all means. I loved this experience from start to finish. The ending of this game is one of those things that has stuck with me, and continues to do so every time I play it. I have convinced many of my friends to join me on exploring this world, and getting to play with all the interesting weapons and enemies and boss fights, and it was that passion that drove me to make this video. It's also the same thing that caused me to join the team as the guy who makes all their YouTube videos. I know to some of you this won't be a shock. Those of you from the Discord who stuck around this long, I thank you. I am not the only person whose story reads like this. I'd wager almost everyone on the team ended up in the same position as me for the exact same reason. As the rest of the team continues to work on version 2.3 of this map, and I continue to make shitposts for YouTube and TikTok, I am reminded of what a passion project this is. To have so many people join the team for a project just because they feel so strongly about it. To see the community they formed around this game, and are continuing to form. If it wasn't for that, I certainly wouldn't be here talking to you all about this right now. And for that, I'm grateful. I hope this surprise reveal doesn't take away from anything that I've said. I don't think it does, but just for the record, I did this entire project independently of the development team. I wrote my notes and formed my own thoughts and opinions with zero oversight. I wanted to make this video because I'm passionate about the game, not because I wanted to promote it. That's why all of us do this in the first place. The Mythoclast returns to tell us one final story. He explains that Drehmal, in their last moments, sat here gazing at the stars, watching as decay reclaimed everything to begin the cycle anew. The last divine was not simply a moniker, but a prophecy. One we didn't get to witness. Virtuo failed in her goal of reaching perfection at the edge of the world, never managing to forgive Malus. Mael, in turn, never did leave Lodar. The things he sought to do, the very thing we spoke to him about in his room on Ytaj, he never managed to realize it. The aspects went first, and Mael watched as destruction took hold on Ytaj. He wanted to change, but ultimately lacked the resolve to do so. The aspects, true to Teflane's suspicions, did not manage to repair the rift. Once there was nobody to stop its growth, nothing became certainty. Drehmal had no regrets, no woes, no problems left unsolved. When it was time for things to end, they did not fight it. They looked out upon the world they had created, and knew that they had done all they could. Drehmal never asked for any of this. It was thrust upon them, but they took up the mantle all the same, and they were happy for it. Truthfully, Drehmal never wanted to be a creator deity. They were born out of necessity, forged in the wake of destruction. Despite that, they were simply pleased to have been there. They saw you, at the dusk of the realm, the last of their children determined to keep going, and thought, "Thank you for your love." To me, this story is one about time, change, and its relationship to history. So much of the story revolves around characters and their inability to change. This idea represents itself in different forms, but most characters express it in one shape or another. Malus is perhaps the most complicated. He spends much of his time on the path of war, content to let his system of destruction and chaos pollute the world and cause damage wherever his people go. At some point, he does recognize a need for change. It's unfortunate that it comes at the expense of Virtuo, but it does come. The problem is that he never does what he set out to do. He never summons the courage to speak to Virtuo, never summons the strength to put an end to his castle and the bitter, bloody, scorched earth ideology that it represents. Virtuo, too, attempts to seek change but never succeeds. She speaks a lot about her frustration of those around her, their continual lack of perfection, and how it bothers her. She eventually seems as though she does begin to understand, coming to terms with the damage that Mael caused her and accepting that it's a part of her. I want to believe that she realizes perfection is not an attainable goal. We can't strive to be perfect beings. We can only strive to be better ones. And her departing for Zyvern implied to me that she might be trying to seek change elsewhere, but the Mythoclast story tells us that she continued seeking the impossible-to-reach goal until the very end. Even he, though, is not the perfect and flawless being that he makes himself out to be. The Mythoclast tries to be an unbiased narrator, tries to act as though he is an impartial voice in this whole affair, but his words still betray him all the same. I think we get glimpses of it when he speaks about Anir and the God Machine. It's the way he speaks about the fact that this had to happen, that nobody is capable of replacing him. Only he understands the way things need to be. Every decision a person makes belies some kind of agenda, some kind of belief. The Mythoclast may be the ultimate arbiter, but his thought process is not inscrutable, in spite of what he says. I don't think Anir should have risen to take his place, or even get anywhere near it. But the Mythoclast is lying to himself to assume that he is an infallible adjudicator. Even the Emperors aren't spared from this fate. Drin may come the closest, as he does seem to regret the Empire's actions when he steals documents to try and erase them from history. But it is his actions that set the Empire down the course it ends up on. For all he tries to stop it, he is unable to do anything. He is unable to change the trajectory that he set in motion. Both he and Anir fear death, and do their best to avoid it. Dren makes a deal with the Mytho class to live long enough to see the end of his empire. Anir attempts to cheat death too, but he's less successful. Anir wants to be different. He wants to be seen as different. He wants to change the trajectory of the Empire from a doomed civilization on the course for the same fate as the realm of inevitable destruction. He wants the Empire to be more than it was under Dren, to realize domination not just of one world, but of all worlds. He is obviously unsuccessful. The way fear drives these people perpetuates a cycle that persists well into the next era with the Order of Insohm. The Order, like Anir before them, spends their time digging up relics of the past. They believe that the answer lies in harnessing the technology of old. They're using the blueprints of a failed empire to try and build a new one. To nobody's surprise, they end up suffering the same fate as Avsohm nearly 1,000 years later. The cycle of destruction begins with the felling of the primal tree, and it simply never, ever stops. Malus takes control of the West and begins his own conquest that persists shockingly close to the events of the story, and he's just one example. The Empire rises to power off the back of fear in much the same way we saw Tethlane consolidate power before being lost. Dren unites the people in order to better defend themselves, but this goal quickly shifts in favor of protecting everyone, and Avsohm's influence expands further and further. Anir continues the same trend. We see explicit mention of this in the Resonant Halls. Malus is a distraction, a tool like any other, being used to drum up support for the Empire in its conquest. They need Mal. The bloodshed he brings is merely a cost to be paid, a stepping stone on the path to a larger and more noble goal. I'm sure Anir would call it the greater good, if he had ever been given a reason to. I doubt Anir had to defend the reason for the Empire's expansion into the stars. This tactic is not without its real-world parallels. Countless wars have been waged in order to garner support for a larger cause. People need something to rally behind, need someone to be seen as the enemy. Much like within the context of Drehmal, this fact transcends time, having been used since time immemorial. We have created our own cycle of destruction, except there is no rebirth. The realm will not reform when it collapses for the final time, and we won't get to be there when it does. War only begets more war, and the sooner we can all understand that, the better. I think back to the comparisons between emperors, and the comparisons to those 3 men stranded on the island. Which of these is truly best? It's easy enough to argue that Dren is the Empire's best leader. He's the one that ultimately brings the most prosperity. He's the one who allows for an empire to form in the first place. The fact that Dren was so successful eats away at Anir for his entire life, and ultimately he feels he never manages to live up to him, even as he sits on the cusp of divinity. Yet, we've talked about how Dren still becomes the root cause for the downfall of his people, and there are few ways to ethically build an empire. I want to then look at the one man who we've spoken so little about, Emperor Highfall, and whether or not his decision to feast on the island's resources is a better move than expansion. Is the winning move not to play? In one sense, yes. Obviously not conquering people and stripping them of their local culture in favor of a more national identity is a good thing. But in a greater sense, it's not like Emperor Highfall was a tremendous leader in other aspects. There's a reason we talk about him so little. No. I think the true answer to who the best emperor was is simple. It doesn't matter. They all, in their own ways, contribute to the ultimate demise of the people they sought to protect. The degree feels arbitrary. I suppose we too share some blame in that regard. Killing Tethlane expands the rift at Yavhlix that will ultimately be the ring of swords that encloses the realm. We may have started the final act of this world earlier than had we not intervened, but this world was destined to end. It was only a matter of how quickly. Unfortunately, we have no way of knowing just how much more time Drehmal had left if we hadn't killed Tethlane, how much longer he would have been able to hold out for before his grasp on the seal failed. We also don't know exactly how long it took before the rift became the end of all things, as the Mythoclast brings us to the end of time. He never explains exactly what happened. Drehmal was already a world in decline. The golden age of nearly every civilization has already happened by the time we reawaken from stasis. Insohm is gone, Avsohm is gone, Mal has abandoned his people and his palace, Virtuo is permanently scarred and seeks redemption elsewhere in the world to dubious success. Even the devoted of Drehmal feel a twinge of pain at the fact that the serpent has been missing for so long. I won't say we don't share the blame of the fall of this world, but we're not responsible for it either. This world is mired in conflict after conflict that we didn't even get to cover, and the remnants are everywhere. Ruins litter the landscape of this world, and they are not all Avsomic in nature either. This extends all the way to Lodar, as the aspects fight with one another in much the same way that the deities do. This is why there are a number of dead aspects. The aspects refuse to change. They spend so much time arguing they can't even fix the problem that will ultimately kill them all. They can't even meet with one another on Ytaj for fear of starting another war. Only Drehmal seems willing to change. Only Drehmal looks upon the world as it is and understands what it could be. The Serpent does not spend their time fighting inevitability. They instead do what they can with the time they were given. With such massive responsibility thrust upon them, they do not choose to run, and they don't choose to take no actions. Drehmal rebuilds the world because someone has to do it, and it might as well be them. Through their parables, we learn how they see the world, how they see people. Not as imperfect beings, but regular people trying their best. Drehmal knows that imperfection is the natural state of all things, but that's not to say that it's a bad thing, or even something you can't improve upon. The only way we'll ever be able to end these horrible cycles is through acceptance, through understanding that we will never be perfect, that we can't run from death, from our problems. We have to be willing to adapt and change. We have to be willing to do the best with the hand we are dealt. There is a lot that lies within our control, and that is where we must excel. That is where we should strive to do all we can for everyone and everything around us. The cycle may someday begin anew, but here and now, we are finite. Of course, there are still many questions that we have left unanswered. What were those mysterious archways that we found all over the continent? What was the Foundry? There are so many questions left that I encourage you to go explore for yourselves, but all of that is squarely a story for another time. Thank you so much for watching. This took a lot longer than I thought it was going to, but I am thrilled that it is finally out and you can finally watch it, and hopefully if you liked it, you'll check out some of my other stuff that will be here on screen. Ooh, that looks pretty good. I hope you stick around because we have so much more left to talk about.